How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the year-end awards for 2023 here at Perfect Reload. We are your hosts, Steve and Friend Davis. Friend Davis, how you doing today?
Good, man. Game of the year. Let's do this. Hype.
Yes, we are doing not only Game of the Year, but we also have a list of awards we're going to get through. And we're also going to go over our top 10 songs of the year and top 10 albums of the year. So it is an extravaganza, if you will. I thought across the board between music and video games, I thought 2023 was a pretty killer year.
Oh, absolutely. Like there's been some super heavy hitters like this year. Like I was still, I feel like every month there was something new that was a new runner for game of the year. So it just became like, I can't keep up with all this, but man, it's so awesome that all these good games are coming out. A lot of really bad ones too, but some just amazing video games. Like the range of quality was vast this year, and that was really, really awesome to see. So
yeah, I would say I'm looking at my list of all the albums I listened to for this. I ended up with 75 albums that I cut down to my top 10, and I would say that almost half of them were artists I had never listened to before. So I think it was a really solid year for finding new music.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've had a lot of the artists on mine were artists that I've had on my previous albums of the year lists, but I think it's really cool to see that they're still just going strong and putting out great material like years later. Like it just shows that. But there's some new stuff too. Like my tastes have, for as much as they've changed, they've also stayed mostly the same. But still, a lot of great new stuff that I've heard this year. A lot of things that I never thought would be on my list that were there. So.
Yeah, same for me. And I think for games, this year was a really interesting year for me because it wasn't only a year where I found really cool indie games that were coming out, which I always try and do every year, but I also really enjoyed what you would probably call the mainstream releases of the year. I think I pretty much played every big release this year with the exception of Zelda. So I'm just not a Zelda fan, but that's pretty rare for me. I typically only kind of attach myself to a handful of big games every year. Last year, I didn't play Elden Ring. I didn't play God of War. There were a lot of the big titles last year I just wasn't interested in. Whereas this year, it seemed like every single week there was something new to play and to check out.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like a lot of these games feel like they were stuff that was pushed back because of the pandemic. So I think once you kind of take that into account, like a lot of the really big stuff like Starfield, like a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, like all that stuff just kind of like landed here. So we just got one like heavy hitter after another, and it's been really awesome to see it. And yeah, but I was very of the AAA games that I did play, like whether it's like Resident Evil 4 or Super Mario Brothers Wonder, like there's just been like some really, really big stuff this year, and I enjoyed most of it too. I enjoyed a lot of the smaller stuff as well, which we'll get into. Yeah, a lot of and some really big surprises too. I'm just like, wow, I can't believe this. This came out this year. So
yeah, there's across the board from music to video games, a lot of stuff I just the stuff that I knew was coming out, but I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. Like some stuff that really took me by surprise, and all in a good way. Like it was really nice. I feel like I'm kind of broadening. I've always had really broad tastes in music. That's been a thing my entire life. But now I'm starting to finally have a much broader taste in video games, and I'm really having a blast being able to play so many different things throughout the year. But we are going to get started with our top 10 songs of the year, and I will kick us off. I want to run through a couple of honorable mentions real quick. Fentanyl Tester from the JPEG Mafia, Danny Brown, Scaring the Hose album, simply because they had a really creative use of a sample from the song Milkshake by Khalees. It's not the part of the song you expect them to sample, so I really love that. Next, the closer on the One O Tricks Point Never album, again, A Barely Lit Path. I thought that was an absolutely fantastic song. Lose Control by Teddy Swims, excellent R&B singer, absolutely loved it. Cracker Island by Gorillaz, I think that's one of their strongest songs in very, very long time, maybe even a decade. That actually, I was a big fan of the Gorillaz when they first came out. I kind of fell off. So to me, this is like my favorite thing since like Dare. It's been it's been a while since.
Big. Yeah. Dare is so iconic that anything. To have something that it's on that level is.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. I found myself really, when Spotify spits out the songs you listen to the most this year, Cracker Island was really high up there. It was a track I just kind of had on repeat for a while. Next up, All American Bitch from Olivia Rodrigo. She absolutely killed it last night at Saturday Night Live with her performance.
I didn't see it. I should log
Oh my God, it's very good. It's her at like a tea party, and she starts just destroying everything, starts smashing cake on her face, and
great.
Like it was so good. And then last up, This Is Why from Paramore. I just thought it was a really good song from the band. I thought that was a nice album that they put out. They're definitely switched away from the style of music they were making at the beginning of their career, and now they are kind of firmly back. And I would say they're pretty much just an alternative rock band at this point.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the new Paramore album. I think it had some really good ideas, and it felt like a really interesting growth for them, like with their sound. I was just really surprised by it, and I also really liked it. Yeah, it wasn't just like they're not just going to keep making Riot over and over again, like they're trying new things, and they're, that's great.
Yep. All right. So my number 10 song of the year, Monaco by Bad Bunny. Okay. I'm a pretty big Bad Bunny fan. I like him quite a bit. Not only because I think he is a talented musician and, some good beats in there. And this is baby making music. If you listen to this album, this is an album to fuck to.
He's got a lot of that.
Yeah. This is between him and Teddy Swims. There's people exploding all over this year. But I really enjoyed this song. It's, I would say it's probably one of my favorite tracks he's put out. My kind of go-to has always been Booker T, from a couple albums ago. But I really like what Bad Bunny does. And, the music video is absolutely ridiculous. It's just him sitting at a table for 5 minutes with Al Pacino as they like fake talk. And then next thing you know, there's just race cars and Al Pacino's gone. Fun stuff, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun track. Nice.
Cool. Yeah. That Bad Bunny album I listened to this year. I'm blanking on the title of it, but it's the one with the horse on the cover.
It's a really long title and I don't speak Spanish.
Oh yeah. Same.
I think it translates. I could be wrong, but I think it translates to there's like no guarantee tomorrow happens or something like that. Right.
Yes. Yep. And I remember listening to a good chunk of that album. I didn't get all the way through it, but what I heard of it was quite good. But yeah, so for my number 10, it is a song called Make It by an artist called Skro. He found himself getting pretty big on TikTok. He is a singer-songwriter, but he's also an electronic producer who makes some pretty interesting, like pop song meets like EDM meets like some pretty complex electro. Like there's a lot of really interesting production flourishes on this track, where it starts off like with a lot of really pretty guitar plucking and some interesting little bleeps and bloops, and then like once the chorus hits, it just breaks down into this like super like over distorted and like compressed to hell a breakdown that I just thought sounded killer and it sounds broken in a really amazing way. And I just thought that track was killer. And I remember listening to it with a friend. They were in the car and they were just like, they heard it and they're like, is something wrong with your connection? Because it just sounds broken. And I'm like, no, that's how it's supposed to sound. And so, yeah, I listened to his EP as well. And there's some really good stuff on there. I just think he's doing some really interesting stuff with, trying to like play with some of the conventions of pop music while also adding like pretty interesting production elements. So, and I thought this track was just slaps. So that's my number 10.
Right on. All right. My number 9, one of my all time favorite bands, is finally back together, and they have had a bumpy road the past few years. This is Keep Up, one of the new singles from the upcoming Go Betty Go album. Go Betty Go was a band that I really thought was going to break out back in the early 2000s when the whole pop punk thing was happening. They had a really successful EP. One of the tracks on it ended up making its way into some TV shows, video games, stuff like that. They ended up on Warped Tour. They put out an album, and then everything kind of fell apart for them. They never put a follow-up album. And eventually the lead singer left. They got a replacement, and they kind of just did some local shows. And then they got back together a few years ago with the original lineup, put out a new EP, and then Betty herself, the guitar player, unfortunately diagnosed with cancer. She has been really going through it, multiple rounds of chemotherapy. She is now finally able to play guitar again, and they've decided not to waste that opportunity and went into the studio and recorded a new album, which is coming out early next year. They've done a couple of singles so far, and Keep Up is just, it's classic Go Betty Go. They're not a pop punk band anymore. They definitely have, that kind of grit to it, but I would say they're more kind of like the Donnas, only not classic rock.
Okay.
They're still very modern sounding. I think Nicolette's vocals, the older she gets, the better her voice sounds. She is just a tremendous singer, and it's super catchy song. And I love this band so much, and I am really, really looking forward to finally having a second album after be 20 years, I think, since the debut came out, something like that, so yeah, it's going to be good to see. I hope they start playing some shows outside of Los Angeles. They pretty much only play in California these days, so hopefully we get a tour out of it. But cool. I really enjoyed the song.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of rare to see like bands, 20 years into their career still doing it, and still like you see it a lot more now, just like bands just coming out with like really great material instead of just like really new, like interesting material, instead of trying to just chase the best years of their career. And I think that's great. So, yeah. Okay. My number 9 is a song called Barley from a band that I just heard of this year called Water From Your Eyes. Now, this is a fairly prolific duo, and it's really hard to like put their sound into like an easy thing to like an easy genre to describe. I would say there are elements of post-punk and like dance punk in this with a bunch, but they also do really interesting things with have a bunch of these like disparaging like loops like next to each other just to compose a song. And I think this track does a lot of really interesting things with repetition. Like you see a lot of like the same phrases of these weird little electronic samples like phase in and out of each other, and the lyrics are like delivered in a very monotone way and a robotic way. And I just thought the track was a really, really interesting, the way that it just takes a bunch of these things that don't fit well together at all and just makes like a really cool track out of it. And I ended up listening to the rest of the album, and it's a lot more post-punky sort of stuff where it's just really interesting. It's really hard to define it, but once you hear it, it's a really, really fascinating listen. And it is one of the more exciting like debuts I've heard. I'm sorry, it was not a debut, but one of the first times hearing a new band, this is one of the more exciting bands I've heard, I found this year. So did you have any thoughts on this track? I thought it was just a really cool track.
I enjoyed it. I don't know if it's something I would listen to all the time, but it's something that I was like, there was a couple of the songs as I went through and I listened to your list. It was Davis's list had a lot of people I just wasn't familiar with, so I wanted to listen to it, so I had some level of familiarity with it. And there were a couple that kind of stood out, and this was one of them that kind of caught my attention. And I have it written down to go. And now that I have some free time, now that we're finally done formulating all this stuff, I can go and listen to some stuff that I didn't get around to listening to, and I have it on my list to go and listen to more of them.
Cool. Yeah. I just thought that track was awesome. So that's my number 9.
All right. So my number 7 is Water.
Number 8?
Yeah, it was your number 8. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it was number 9. Jeez, I can't count. Never mind. All right. So my number 8. Wait. 10, 9, 8. Okay, yeah, I'm good. My number 8 is the song Water by Tyla. Tyla has kind of been blowing up. I had never heard of her before, and I think that's because she's like super young. I think this is kind of her first big thing. Yeah, she's 21. And every Friday, I check the Spotify like top 50, top 100, the pop hit stuff, just get the lay of the land for the new music that's coming out. And I was out driving around one Friday night, running some errands, and I just let the playlist go as I'm driving. And eventually, you know, if it's something I'm not interested in, it just kind of becomes background noise. And then this came on, and it was so different. And I was like, what is this? So when I stopped at the next store I was going to, I like Googled her real quick, and I was like, okay, she's kind of just brand new. And I ended up just listening to the song over and over again, and I just really, really enjoyed it. She has a really nice voice. I like the use of the ensemble vocals during the chorus, where she's got some layering. It's not just her layering her own voice underneath her. There's some male voices that come in, and it's just a fun track. And to go back with the theme of this year, I mean, this is hot music. This is the stuff you put on. It used to be Barry White, but I mean, kids these days are.
Yeah.
I mean, people are getting pegged before they have their first kiss these days. So I mean, this is the kind of shit.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, this is what you're putting on these days. You're turning up the temperature here. And I feel weird because I looked her up and I was like, oh, I'm old enough to be her father. I can't talk. I can't think about this.
Are you? I mean,
genetic or physically, yes. I could have fathered a child.
Physically, yeah, sure, yeah. But I also really like this track. For a lot of, I think, you know, we're pretty spoiled this year for a lot of like really good R&B, like you said, baby making music.
Yep.
And so I thought this track was great. So, but yeah, my number 8 is I Said by an artist called Swami Sound. So I discovered this artist through the Bomb Rush Cyberfunk soundtrack. They had a song on the Bomb Rush Cyberfunk soundtrack called Refuse. And so I like that track so much. It was one of the highlights of that soundtrack. So I decided to go back and listen to his most recent LP that came out this year. And I thought this track was just fantastic. I thought it had like a really great vocal performance. I think the production really harkens back to a lot of the like 90s era drum and bass, and it reminded me of a very similar vibe of like some of like the mid to late 90s Everything But the Girl, like that sort of stuff, like drum and bass. And I still have a lot of nostalgia for that music because I think a lot of it harkens back to a lot of like PS1 and N64 soundtracks that used a lot of sample packs and used a lot of pretty famous drum breaks. So
yeah, was some of the stuff, I apologize, some of the stuff I listened to yours yesterday, it's because I only listened to it once and kind of blended through. Is this a song that just kind of stops in the middle and has the amen break just kick in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay. Yeah. And he's the guy that has the Scott Steiner chainmail on his head.
That's
so
right.
I really appreciated that when Scott Steiner got off his rocker in wrestling in the late 90s, he got all roided up and started wearing chainmail on his head. I saw this and I was like, oh man, Scott Steiner is making drum and bass now. Like, I'm in.
Yep, that is him. But yeah, I thought this track was just it felt like a really nostalgic, like just a good vibe from just me really harken back to like a lot of that music that I hold in really high regard and have a lot of nostalgia for. So I think it was just a really great representation of that. Like it sounded nostalgic without just kind of using that as like its main pull. It sounded like a pretty I thought it was just a really refreshing take on it, like to bring that sound into now. So, and I loved it. So, and I love the rest of that. The rest of that EP is also great. So, definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that this was on the Bomb Rush Cyberfunk soundtrack, because as I was listening to the songs, you know, some of the stuff that you sent me, I was like, this sounds like it could be the soundtrack from that game. I was like, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I burned through that soundtrack a lot this year. I felt like it wouldn't. I was tempted to put it in my top 10, but I was just like, it's a soundtrack, so it's kind of like it felt like cheating, even though it's not quite cheating. Yeah, great soundtrack. So yeah.
Alrighty, my number 7, the song "Mirror" by Code Orange. I've been a Code Orange fan for quite some time. I will say I did not particularly care for the new album. It has Billy Corgan on it, and I wanted to throw up. But this is a really interesting song because this isn't really a Code Orange song. I mean, it is because it's written by Code Orange and it appears on a Code Orange album. But this sounds like the band Adventures. And if you're wondering what the band Adventures is, it is the indie rock side project of all the members of Code Orange. And this really kind of sounds like that. So Reba Myers, a guitar player of Code Orange, over the past few albums has started to sing more and more. She started off just kind of doing the screams to kind of be underneath the lead singer Jamie, but she started doing clean vocals, and she has a very beautiful voice, and this is pretty much a solo song for her. It's the band's obviously playing, but it's just her on vocals. It's sung the entire time. It's a very light song, but it's a very catchy song. The music video is very cool. They really, it was a smart choice for them to kind of push this as it wasn't the lead single from the album. That was the song of Billy Corgan, but this song definitely got way more attention than anything else on the record, because I feel like that record kind of came and went really quick. Whereas the last time a Code Orange record came out, everybody was talking about it for the entire year. And I think now the only people are talking about is this song from this record. But I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it's one of their best tracks, I think, ever, to be honest. And I was really glad that they were able to do something this different on one of their records.
Yeah, I think they've become a pretty divisive band in a lot of ways. I think they've taken some pretty big leaps of faith with their sound that have sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. But I still respect the fact that they were willing to take such a big swing with putting this on their album. It almost feels like kind of like a bait and switch in some ways, which I think is, I think when artists do pretty big bait and switches like that, I think it's always pretty interesting and compelling. But yeah, to your point, it definitely does stand out. And I also wasn't like a huge fan of this record. I thought it was okay, but I liked their previous record a lot more. Yeah, this definitely feels like one of the more polarizing albums of this year. Like the people who liked it seem to really like it, but also the people who hated it really hated it.
Yeah, I think it's really indicative of trend chasing. I think a big thing that's going to happen next year in music, because it happened this year, but people that were listening to the albums that came out this year that, maybe weren't ready to have an album out, but their management's telling them, okay, you got to have an album out for 2024, are obviously going to look at what did really well in 2023 to try and capitalize that. And I think a big trend in music across multiple genres, everything from metal to pop and in between, is we're going to the 90s. The 80s stuff is pretty much over at this point. And it's going in one of two directions. You have the stuff like Olivia Rodrigo, which sounds like 90s grunge with pop. And then you have the stuff that's like what Spiritbox is doing now, which is just full blown late 90s, early 2000s new metal. And Code Orange put out this random song. It didn't appear on any EP or album or anything. It was just a standalone single a couple of years ago, and it was a straight up new metal song. And that's what I really figured they were going to go and do. And then Spiritbox puts out their new metal track that was very much it was like a mix of garbage with new metal. Right. And it's like, okay, that's the direction they're going in. And I figured that was the direction Code Orange was going in. But then they come out with this album that's just like 90s rock mixed with kind of what they've been doing. And it was just like they couldn't make the decision if they wanted to go into the grunge stuff, if they wanted to go into the new metal stuff. And I think because of that, the album felt stuck. And it was just like, what is this? It's an album with like trying to find its own identity.
Yeah. I felt like it was just kind of chasing different elements of the past without adding anything really interesting or new to it. And it was disappointing, but like, I wouldn't say it was a bad record, but I guess compared to, it didn't really play to their strengths.
Yeah.
But this track was definitely a highlight. I agree with you there for sure. Okay. So my number 7 is a track called Body Ramen by Blauen. So Blauen is an experimental techno artist who does a lot of stuff with Eurorack modular gear. And he's been, he even tours live with all that stuff. Like there's a pretty famous picture that's been memed to death of him getting checked at airport security with his giant like modular Eurorack gear. And they're just looking at it like, this is clearly a bomb.
Yes, I'm looking at this photo now. This is very good.
Yeah, it's a great picture. But yeah, so I thought this track was just a really good representation of some of the things he does well. Like it's got a lot of really, really crunchy textures and really just interesting like layering of samples. Like there's like a pretty what feels like a pretty like heavily processed vocal sample that like loops in the background of each of these like of these bars, and it's just I found it to just be kind of haunting and really just it's just a banger of a track. Like I love there's just random little clips of sounds that happen throughout the song. Like there's a sound of like what sounds like the sound of somebody drinking the end of like a Slurpee, where it's just like they're just getting the last of it, and you hear like the sound of the straw just kind of like that. I mean, just a lot of really interesting like earworm textures that I think are really satisfying for me. I think for a lot of people, they'd be, I mean, your mileage may vary if you're just like sensitive to like pretty harsh noise or, you know, harsh electronic like garble, like, because a lot of this just stuff, I mean, if you really like take it at face value, you can argue that like this is just a lot of like what sounds like Buchla spill out. Like, and then he just kind of edited it to like take the parts that worked and made a track out of it. But I think there's definitely there's a real sense of like composition here that like I think he does a really good job at. He's done a really good job of just like creating interesting textures within his techno. And I just thought this track was the best thing he put out this year personally. So really cool if you're into like experimental techno and you want some stuff that's like some really interesting, like outlandish alien textures in your techno. So
yeah,
worth a look.
Yeah, I definitely need more harsh stuff. I only want to listen to stuff that sounds like White House in the last 10 minutes of a My Bloody Valentine concert.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah. God. I think about that concert, the end of You Made Me Realize that concert we went to. Like, I think about that all the time. Just like, I felt physically violated from how loud that was.
I took my earplugs out for like just a moment because I'm already deaf enough. I don't need to be worse. And I was like, I'm good. And then I just put it back in.
I gotta experience this for a little bit because I'm here, but like also just I can't. So
yeah. If I watch back that video I took of it on my phone just gets hot. It doesn't know what to do.
Like your speaker's about to break. Like but that was. Yeah, one of my favorite musical moments probably ever.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great show. And
great show,
Alrighty, my number 6 is a song that I love, but also kind of hate. It was without a doubt the earworm of the year, and that is Greedy by Tate McRae. Our new ex-Tina, our new dirty Christina Aguilera stand-in, but has an obsession with hockey. So my biggest problem with this song is that she sings in cursive, and that shit drives me up the wall. You know, she can't pronounce a word to save her life. She can't finish a pronunciation to save her life, but the song is undeniably catchy. And I just couldn't stop listening to it. And
it's good. I had to like look into what singing with cursive was, because I've heard that term get thrown around a lot this year. You hear it thrown around a lot just with, you know, with some of the newer pop stars of the day. But once you like know what it is and you hear it, and like she absolutely sings in cursive, and like I can see how that'd be super irritating to a lot of people, but I thought this track was also like a lot of fun, and just like I think she's very charming. Like
Yeah, last night, the other song that Olivia Rodrigo did on SNL last night was she did a piano version of Vampire. And during the first verse, she sings in cursive. And I just wanted to like smack her on the head with a newspaper and just be like, stop that. Don't do that.
You're on TV.
We gotta get rid of this shit in the music industry. It is driving me up the wall.
Yeah. Like we're professionals. But no, that is I like that song too. I thought that was a really, you know, one of the more. I can definitely see how, you know, it's a guilty pleasure, but yeah, she's one of the more interesting stars.
Her album came out on 2 days ago on Friday.
Oh, did it?
It's fucking awful. The 2 singles are good. This and X's, and then the rest is just like filler trash.
Yeah,
and it's like really not good.
Yeah, for every good pop album that comes out, there's always just one like rank and file thing that like no one's going to be thinking about this a year from now.
And she has good songwriters. Who is it that woman that's getting like album of the year all over the place? Was it Caroline Polachek?
Oh yeah, Caroline Polachek. Yeah.
Yeah. So the person that like co-wrote the album with her did a lot of the stuff for Tate McRae, and it's just like you couldn't figure out a way to like not have this sound this bad? Like,
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I have to give that a listen just to kind of see out of curiosity. But that Caroline Polachek record is outstanding.
I could not get into it.
You didn't like it?
I tried. I listened to it twice, and I just couldn't get into it.
I think like production wise, it's really fascinating. Like I think she does a lot of like there's a lot of vocal gymnastics she does on that record that are really.
It's a really well produced record. I mean, it really is. But I just the overall just feel of it, I just couldn't connect with.
It's fair. Yeah, it's very busy. But yeah, I understand. Okay, so my number six, correct? Are we number 6? 5.
I just did my number 6, so this would be your number 6.
Okay, so my number 6 is Just Your Doll by a group called Snow Strippers. Now, Snow Strippers is a pretty elusive electronic duo of a man and a woman. The woman is on vocals, and there's a lot of Crystal Castles energy here. Like I think that's kind of like the biggest comparison point that they've gotten. But instead of kind of going for like that, like, 8-bit like chiptune meets distortion thing and just like having all of the vocals just distorted to oblivion and just being blown out and aggressive, I think this one tries to like harken back to a lot of like 90s era trance nostalgia, or early 2000s trance as well. And I think it takes a lot of those sounds and really recontextualizes them into now in a way that I think is really interesting. There's a lot of the imagery they use in a lot of their marketing and a lot of their music videos is objectively very dark. Like there's like an underlying level of like something pretty sinister going on underneath it that you just like, I think is really interesting. I thought this track was just a lot of fun. Like I think her vocals are great. I think they put out another mixtape this year that was also quite good. But this track was actually on an EP that came out a couple weeks ago. But that's also well worth a listen. That mixtape is called April Mixtape 3.
Yes.
They're very prolific. Like they put out like a ton of music in a very short period of time. Yet they remain pretty mysterious. Like they don't really give a lot of information away in their interviews, and but I think a lot of the music just kind of speaks for itself. Like I really dig their sound. And I remember you had positive things to say about it as well.
Yeah. So out of the 10 songs on your list, I had only listened to one of them previous. So everything else was brand new to me. And out of those 9 songs that were brand new, this was my favorite thing. From your list. I really quite enjoyed this. I ended up looking up some information about them, reading some interviews, and just trying to get a little bit more. At first, it seemed like it was a cover for somebody that was bigger. Like it seemed like it was like a front for like somebody else. And then I was like, okay, no, it's just like they're just weird. It's it's not somebody's like secret project or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Because at first I was like, is this like a Hunter Gex like doing something weird? And I was like, nah, they would just do it under their own name. Like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
If they were gonna do different styles of music, I think they just do it themselves. But I was like, there's something to this, and I really enjoyed listening to it.
Yeah. They're one of the more exciting acts to come out from this year or the past couple of years, and so it's been really fun to dig into their discography a bit. There's a lot of it, so
yeah. Alrighty, my number 5 is the song "Strangers" by Kenya Grace. She legitimately came out of nowhere, I believe. I saw an interview with her that right before this song came out, she was still working her day job. She was a piercer at a piercing and tattoo shop in England. And this song just kind of hit. She has no album to promote. She has no EP. She just kind of put the song out. She's a couple other tracks out now. But this just, it really just kind of took over. It was on, I think Spotify's viral playlist, which is typically the songs that are the most used on TikTok. Because sometimes you'll see like older songs in there, it's like whatever gets, used
that's
for.
Where I thought I heard this before, because I remember I'm pretty sure this is a TikTok song.
Yeah, so I found it through Spotify, and I could not stop listening to it. It ended up being my second most track on Spotify for last year. and it's like kind of like whisper vocals through the whole song. You know, she's got a voice. You know, she's not like belting out notes or anything, but you know, it fits the music. It's like real kind of just traditional like drum and bass underneath it. It's very kind of like atmospheric in a way. It's something that I thought you would probably be really into.
It gave me a lot of like, are you familiar with an artist named Pink Panthers?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like it reminded me. It's not quite the same, exactly the same thing, but it gave me a lot of a similar vibe that I love Pink Panthers. So I thought this track was pretty surprising to just kind of like come out of nowhere, and be it's so hard to predict like what's going to be like this popular thing on TikTok. Like TikTok, for all the terrible things it does, like it does introduce some, you know, pretty interesting songs. And it's kind of hard to gauge like what's going to be like going to blow up on that app. But yeah, this is definitely one of the highlights from this year for sure. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what she does next. It looks like she has done at least one live performance. I saw some cell phone footage of her performing. I don't even know if it was at like a traditional venue. She was just on the floor in the middle of the crowd. They had the track was pumped in through the speakers and then just her doing her vocals. She looked nervous as hell. So I am guessing that she probably does not have a lot of experience playing live. And that may have been her first time performing in front of a crowd, period. But it was it's a really, really, really catchy track. And I'm assuming that they're probably going to, I imagine she's signed with somebody at this point. There's got to be somebody that's putting this stuff out. And I assume an album's got to be like the top priority to get her into the studio to do something.
I would agree. Yeah. I think she's definitely got some potential, and I don't want them to like push her too quickly to like just get more material out and have it be like this half-baked thing. She deserves to have some like good songwriters and good producers behind her to really flesh it out, because this is definitely a good starting point for sure.
Honestly, if this is the stuff she's doing on her own, I wouldn't give her a producer.
Yeah,
I would just let her go. You know, maybe have somebody to kind of rein some ideas in or to help, but she definitely doesn't need co-writers or anything. Like, she just let her go and see what she comes up with.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. Okay, my number 5 is a song called "Idling Somewhere" by Jane Remover. So Jane Remover has been making music for a few years now under the name Delete Zeke. They recently came out as transgender, so they became Jane Remover to kind of put an end to the previous project and start with this, not only just like with a new name, but also with a pretty substantially different new sound. Because a lot of their previous material was very much a lot of like complex like IDM and like meets like a lot of like Porter Robinson type stuff, where it's just like it's EDM meets like dubstep meets like a lot of just like really, maximalist like pop music and electronic music. And so this was a pretty significant stylistic departure for her, and I thought this track was just kind of heart-wrenching in a lot of ways. Like it's very slow, and a lot of the lyrics are very personal and very vulnerable, and I thought that her delivery was very heart-wrenching, and just a really gorgeous track. Like it does a really good job of just like having a lot of just like long stretches of pretty calm, understated vocal performances, but also, these pretty long passages of just like blasts of white noise and blasts of like a lot of just really cathartic screams. And just, it's a really interesting push and pull that I think she does really well throughout this whole album. And I thought this was like just a track that I end up coming back to just a lot because I really enjoyed the vibe of it, and I thought it was just a really great track from a really great album as well. But I think for how much of a stylistic leap she did for this record, I think she captures everything that made her previous material great, just in a different way. And that's great. I thought, just a haunting track for sure.
Yeah, this was the one song on your list that I had heard before from the album Census Designated, which I thought was a really fantastic album. And I think this is easily the best track from that record. It's the one that really kind of stands. I mean, the whole record is good, but it really kind of stands out, you know, amongst the rest of them. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Great track.
All right, my number 4, one of my favorite artists out with a new album. So, of course, I was going to pay special attention. This is the song Like Humans by Mirkur. I have been a really big Mirkur fan since the project started years ago at this point. This is album number 4 or 5, I believe. I wouldn't say necessarily a return to form, but definitely a lot different. So the last album, Folk Song, was just traditional instruments and just traditional Scandinavian folk music. No electronic instruments whatsoever. All just stripped away except for just the traditional instruments. Mirkur started off as a black metal project, and then it still retains some of that black metal elements. Like this song in particular, I would say is probably like a combination of black metal and dream pop. There's like a pretty serious blast beat going towards the climax of the song, but it doesn't have like the ripping guitar that you like the tremolo picking that you would expect from black metal to accompany it. It's still just the regular melody of the song. I think this is one of her best vocal performances ever in the history of the project. I think it's her most accessible song that she's probably ever written. It's got like a real hook to it that, you know, that I've been just had in my head on repeat for I don't know how long now. But you know, this project has been it's been such a trip. You know, Emily Bruin, who is Mirkur, she started off in like a girl group, left that, became a professional model. She actually appeared, you know, the song by Lonely Island, the Ballad of Jack Sparrow, with Michael Bolton. She plays Michael Bolton's wife in the music video when he's doing the Scarface thing. And then she was like, you know what? I'm done with the girl group stuff. I'm done with the modeling. I'm just going to start a black metal band. And then that's what she's been doing ever since.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought this track was gorgeous. And like, I definitely, I want to check out more of her discography because I mean, you were describing it the way you're describing it. Like, I remember you said it was like shoegaze meets like black metal, like with shoegaze elements that would like, you know, also with folk music. And that sounds great. Like I like this track quite a bit as well. I don't know why, but it reminded me of, I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation. Lingua Ignota. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Lingua Ignota.
Yeah. I felt like a similar energy there. I don't know. I mean, but like I've really liked Lingua Ignota's music. But yeah, I thought this track was fantastic, and I definitely want to dive more into her work because I didn't know her how ridiculous her backstory was. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I would start with Merit, Mareidt. You might find it under the title Nightmare. I think it's Swedish or Finnish for nightmare. That's like the real middle point. It's not only like her middle album in terms of her discography, but it still has a lot of the black metal, but then it's also moving into like the traditional folk music. Like it's like you could see where it like all melted in the middle together, because then the next album after that was just the folk music.
Oh, okay.
So you can kind of see like where she was getting the ideas from. That record is the first two tracks on that album are one of the best opening like 1-2 punches on a record like ever. I mean, they like complement each other like so well. And it's she does some really, really impressive stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely want to dive into that record for sure. Yeah, okay. My number 4 is a song called Sea Girl by King Cruel, featuring Raveena doing some additional vocals. I found this just to be a very dreamy, just a pleasant, just like indie rock like ballad. It's very understated. Like I really like her little like vocal clips that kind of like, you know, accentuate throughout the song. And I think King Cruel has always had a pretty deadpan delivery, like a lot of just like kind of just like a drool, where it's just it kind of sounds mopey, but like and you can definitely feel like he's not the star. This is like the one track on this album where he's like not like front and center. So I think she kind of steals the show for this one particular song off this record. And I just thought it was really pleasant and just a really good just really beautifully composed track. Amidst it felt like a pretty calming, serene place to go to in an album that was otherwise pretty bleak, and pretty really sad. Like, it was a very sad record overall, but this one kind of felt like one of the few spots of respite where like it was a sense of calm amidst all of the uncertainty. And so yeah, I thought it was just a really good track, really well composed, and really just interesting. So yeah, I don't know what you thought of it, but I thought it was just great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The one thing I was really surprised is, when I looked, I was obviously typing these songs into Spotify when I was listening to them yesterday, and like how big his following is. Like 1.2 million monthly listeners. I was like, I've never heard of this person. And it just it kind of shows you that these days, like, you can have this massive following and still be totally unknown to a lot of people. But I mean, it's not stuff I'm going to listen to all the time, but I enjoyed it. I think it fit. I would say way more so than my list, that your list, if you were to put all these songs, your 10 songs on a playlist, none of them would really feel kind of like out of place. Like, they're all very different from each other, but you can see like the thread throughout. And I thought that I was like, man, this just kind of like fits. Like, this is just a nice track. It's like I could picture listening to this kind of stuff if I was like studying or just like doing work, like that kind of thing. Like, you just need to be immersed in something, Yeah,
I like it. I hearken it back to in High Fidelity when he says like, I don't want to hear old sad bastard music. I just want something I could ignore.
Yes.
I feel like it's kind of like a middle ground between those two of just like, it is sort of that, but it is background music, like, as well as being just something that, like, if you really dive further into it, it is very sad and there's a lot to unpack. Like, he's obviously processing a lot of really difficult, big emotions, but
would this be on your Monday morning playlist?
Absolutely. Yes.
But would you listen to it a Monday afternoon?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm totally losing it here, aren't I?
What's that?
I'm totally losing it here, aren't I?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay,
yeah.
It's from High Fidelity, where they're listening to the playlist. He goes, Rob, this is your Monday morning playlist. He goes, it's Monday fucking afternoon.
Oh yeah, Monday afternoon. You should get out of bed earlier. Yeah. Yeah. It took me way too long to register that. Yeah, but yes. Yeah, and
I have slowly become Rob over the years.
Me too, absolutely.
I'm going to tear all my records out of the shelves and put them autobiographically.
Yeah, especially after I worked in a record store, I'm just like, I am straight up becoming that dude, for sure. But yeah, no, I like this song and this record like a lot. I listened to it actually quite late this year. I listened to it like for the first time last month, and it really just grew on me significantly. So yeah.
Alrighty, my number 3. It's one of those weird instances where a band you love starts to make a different kind of music, and usually they just kind of keep making a different kind of music. They don't really ever kind of go back to the way they used to sound, but Fall Out Boy did. And this is Love from the Other Side by Fall Out Boy. They kind of sound like they did 15 years ago again, and I like it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just it's just like, I don't know if you were there that day, but back when you and I used to work together, was when Mania came out, the Fall Out Boy Mania. Were you there the day that what was the name of that song?
The one that Young and Menace.
Yes, were you there the day that song came out?
I was.
Okay, so I got back from lunch and I sat down at my desk and everybody came over to me and said, hey, Fall Out Boy has a new song out and you need to listen to it right now. And I put the headphones on and I listened to it, and it got to that chorus with the the pitched vocals and just the look on my face, and everybody around us just started bursting out laughing. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, God, they've strayed from the path. And it was actually funny. It was at that same job. It was before you started working there, though. I don't remember how the topic came up, but somebody came up to me. I was just sitting at my desk working. Somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, so and so said that your favorite band is Fall Out Boy." And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "No, like really though?" And I was like, "No, it is." And they're like, "Man, I thought they were fucking with me." And I was like, "No, I genuinely like that band." Like,
yeah. So. Yeah, like you look at some of the stuff that you listen to, and you're just like, "There's no way he likes Fall Out Boy." Like that would seem like it would be so beneath him. but like, yeah, if you're solely judging a book by its cover,
Yeah.
like, then yeah, I can see that. But I do remember that day pretty vividly of like, Young and Menace was baffling.
That album was baffling.
That
There's a
album,
reggae song that's on there.
Yeah, that they really lost the thread. And part of me kind of wonders if that album is going to be like looked back upon in like 10 years and just being like, it was a misunderstood masterpiece or something like that.
So
like,
I can tell you from this. So Joe Troman, the guitar player in Fall Out Boy, wrote a biography that came out this year, and I read the book. Well, I listened to the audiobook, but the section on Mania, very small. He was not thrilled and almost left the band.
Oh, man. Yeah. So you kind of wonder, you definitely know when some albums are made out of like contractual obligation, or they're just like, yeah, we need to get this album out, but we have no ideas, and we're all just kind of like, we're bored, or this is just kind of run its course. And this definitely, I don't feel like this album, that album felt genuine, but to some degree, but it's just a lot of, I mean, there were just a lot of bad ideas.
Mania is an album without any soul. They have one of the best drummers in the business, and they use sampled drums on the whole album. They have one of the best singers in the business, and they auto-tune the shit out of his voice the entire album.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is the point? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, that album is, it is rough. But this album, I think, really, you know, played to a lot. Really, it was just like the album that people wanted.
Yeah.
Like a new thing that people wanted. It really harkened to a lot of their strengths. And I thought, you know, that was great to see them kind of like, you know, come back after Mania to really make something that really, like I said, played to their strengths, and just really it captured some of the best eras of their career without like sounding like it was pandering.
Yes,
nostalgia baiting.
They, you know, it's always hard to tell when you're reading into things. Like, we don't know the band personally, but you see them in interviews now, and when they're talking about this album, and they just look better. They don't look exhausted. They don't look tired. They look like they're normal people again. And it's just like, I think they just are happier playing the style of music.
Yeah. Like because I guess the more you hear about the context around Mania, you kind of wonder if that was just an album they didn't want to make, but this generally felt like an album they wanted to make. Like, and they seem like they're proud to tour behind it, and they're proud to just, you know, play those songs, and, you know, and that's great. Like that shows that if you give the band that creative control, instead of them just kind of like forcing them into this, you know, an album every 2 year cycle and just force out crap, then, you know, but yeah, that song is great. I agree. So, all right. So my third song is a song called My Voice by Mondo Grosso, featuring a vocalist by the name of KAF. Might just be Calf. But I've been listening to Mondo Grosso for about maybe 10 or 15 years now, because Mondo Grosso first appeared, their song Shining appeared on the Lumines soundtrack. This was when you started the first Lumines back on PSP. This was the first song that you heard. And they are headed by a producer by the name of Shinichi Osawa, who was pretty big in like the Bloghouse days. He's a Japanese producer, and he's been doing this for a very long time. He put out a really excellent soul album back in the mid to late 2000s as well that I still go back to a lot. But yeah, this track was a really interesting like J-pop song, but like it had like a lot of really amazing production flourishes that kind of blew me away. Like just a lot of really great attention to detail, and just a lot of really interesting play on dynamics of like, and creating just like taking like these little sounds and just like playing with the reverb, just like taking a sound and then just blowing it out with reverb and then just shrinking it back down to size again. And just so many really interesting production flourishes throughout the track that I just was like, I remember the first time I listened to it, I was just like, this song sounds like it fucking fell out of space. Like it was just a really cool, really interesting, like production. Like, and it just, I thought it was the vocal performances was outstanding. I thought the production was just like sublime. And I think it's really cool to see that like Mondo Grosso this far into their career is still putting out really amazing tracks like this. A lot of really, dance floor friendly tracks, but also tracks that will take a vocalist that's pretty popular elsewhere and just like, play to their strengths. So I thought this was a really, really strong example of that. Yeah, I just thought that track was incredible.
Yeah, I think this song in particular, there's that old stereotype that people kind of stop listening to new music the older they get. They just kind of get stuck in their ways and just listen to whatever was popular during their formative years. And I think you and I in particular very much don't believe in that, because we are constantly finding new music, and it's not hard to find new music. People say it's hard to find new music. It is absolutely not. Spotify lays it right out for you with 9 million playlists. I'm sure Apple Music does the same thing. But this song feels modern and fresh. Shinichi Osawa is almost 60.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you can stay current. You don't have to just stop and stay stuck in time. You can keep moving forward. And I think this song is a really good example of that.
Yeah, I agree. Like he's managed to play with a lot of the trends of now in ways that like he's not just he's toying with those conventions in really interesting ways and expanding upon them instead of just being like, all right, I'm gonna go the easy route and just make like what people are looking for. I feel like that's kind of like what, for all the good music that David Guetta has made, he's also made a lot of stuff that's just like, I'm good. Like, sure. Like, here's the thing that just kind of harkens back to, it's a nostalgia baiting. And I feel like that's not what Shinichi Osawa was doing. I think he's taken this project and really made some of the most forward thinking pop music, I think, to come out of anywhere. And he's still doing it. And so I think that's great. This track I was really blown away by. So yeah, that's my favorite, my third favorite for this year for sure.
All right, my number 2, which is actually the most recent song on my list, but I have not and will not stop listening to it. And it is Houdini by Dua Lipa. So I am a pretty massive Dua Lipa fan. I love that she is, she said she is now done with it. This is the beginning of her next phase. She's leaving the disco stuff behind. I think this still has a little bit of that disco in it.
I think so too.
So this song was this is Tame Impala doing the music. Kevin Parker did this. I am not a big Tame Impala fan, but this is really solid stuff. This is really well made. I don't really necessarily like the extended cut of the song that they put out. I thought it was going to be more of like a club version where it had like the extended instrumentals that you would see like Eric Prides would do like a 3-minute cut of Genu, and then there'd be like a 9-minute cut of the song for the clubs, right? And I kind of thought that was what this was going to be, but it has like a whole verse that was cut. They like mess around with some of the instrumentation, like the layering on it. It's not just the same song. Like it feels like it feels more like a remix than an extended version of it. So I wasn't super into that. I think the radio cut is the way to go with this song. But if this is indicative of what the next album is going to sound like, then it's going to be probably my favorite pop album of the year next year when it comes out. I think it is a tremendous song. It plays to her strengths, and it's a fun song. It gets stuck in your head, and it's just like, it's everything that good pop music should be. It's well made, well sung. The whole presentation around it is just really, really good. And there's an interview that she did, I think it's with Rolling Stone, where she's in the studio where they recorded the track, and you hear about like all the ideas they went through, and all of this started from just the bass line. Kevin Parker was just playing bass in the studio, and she's like, "Whoa, stop! Like, just play that on a loop. Give me like give me like 8 bars of that." And then they just start layering, and it's like, that's how it should be done. It shouldn't just be, oh, we have this pre-made song, we just need to find a singer for it. Like they've done in the past. Like I think one of the best known examples of that is the song Telephone with Lady Gaga.
Yes.
That song was totally done. They gave it to Britney Spears. She said no. And then they gave it to Lady Gaga. And it's like, I don't like the idea of like shopping songs around. Yeah, like, it should be like a collaborative effort between everybody involved.
Yeah, I think you definitely hear like the Tame Impala DNA in this song, like
Yeah.
through and through. Like I really like Tame Impala. I think he's a really good songwriter and he does a lot of really interesting things. So I have not heard the extended version of this track, but from how you're describing it, this sounds like a lot of Tame Impala tracks do a lot of what you described. Like they have like these long, just extended sections where when you hear the radio cut of them, they're definitely like trimmed down, and there's like whole sections of the song just gone, just to kind of make it a more easily digestible thing. Because otherwise, the song would be like 7 or 8 minutes, and you just can't do that on the radio. But yeah, no, I think Kevin Parker of Tame Impala has just a lot of really good ideas for production and for like a lot just making tracks that a lot of Tame Impala songs also start with a really good bass line and they just build on top of that. So once you said that, I was just like, that's exactly what he does with his main project. So, but yeah, I also thought this track was just outstanding. So I definitely, if that's the direction she's going to go in for her next album, then that's very exciting. I hope he like has more of a hand in it.
It
Sure.
sounds like, unless, I don't know how busy he is. He obviously has his own stuff going on, but
Yeah.
she really sounded like she liked working with him.
Mhm.
And, we've seen that, like, Halsey did the album where it was just Nine Inch Nails. They handled the
Right.
production on every single track. I don't know if it's going to be that where
Yeah.
she brings him in for everything, but I have to imagine he's probably on more than one cut
Oh, yeah.
on the record.
Yeah, he's had his hand in quite a few just random projects throughout the years where you're just like, oh, okay, he did a Thundercat song, or he did, he was on the Gorillaz record,
Yeah.
like, so he's definitely got his hands and he's, in demand clearly. So I think it would be great. I think there's a lot of potential there if he would just kind of have a hand in more of her songwriting. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I would really like to be in the conversation between him and Thundercat. Like, who's going to play this bass line on this track? And then they just start smacking each other with basses.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Like Thundercat wins in that bass battle every time.
Yeah, it's just like a Mike Hager Final Fight spinning, like holding two basses out, and they're just colliding in the middle of like room B in the studio.
I forgot all about that Tame Impala Thundercat track that came out recently. That track is also outstanding. It plays to their strengths like perfectly. But yeah, that track is great. I gotta go listen to that extended cut as soon as I can. Okay, so my number 2 is a song called Jonathan L. Siegel by Sampha. So Sampha is an R&B artist from England who's been putting out music for about, I would want to say, pretty close to a decade now. But he put out his first album back in 2017. And since then he's had a lot of features on, you see him on a lot of Drake songs. And I think every Drake song he appears on, he kind of steals the show. I think his voice is just phenomenal. I think his production is outstanding as well. Like he's a very, very talented like musician. He's not just a producer. And so he finally put out a new album this year after a 6-year wait. And this track really stood out to me because it had a lot of really, really great production flourishes and a lot of really interesting vocal layering. Like there's a lot of like sections of the song where there's backing vocals from not quite a choral backing vocals, but there are choral backing vocals as well, but there's like just like sing like shout along chants like with other people in the song. And I think he does a really good job of just composing all of it and having it all come together in a way. Like this song in particular moves in a lot of different directions. Like it starts off with some pretty understated like synths, and eventually turns into just like a full-on pop song with just like there's orchestral arrangements, there's violins, the song ends in like a guitar pluck like outro, and just across the board, just a really, really stunning composition and really amazing production flourishes that I was just kind of floored by, honestly. Like just felt like a really fully realized, like it didn't feel overstuffed. It didn't feel like this like over ambitious thing. Like everything just felt like super well composed, and just, I was really taken aback by it. And that carries through the rest of the album for sure. But I think this was just definitely, this was like my favorite thing off of the album by like a mile. So
yeah, I wasn't familiar with his solo stuff. I knew him from the couple of tracks that he did on the last Kendrick Lamar album. So I wasn't super familiar with this stuff. I like the song. I thought the song was solid. I had to laugh at the title of the song though, because Jonathan Livingston Seagull is a really well-known novel, but it's the book that Mike Brady is reading in bed during the Brady Bunch movie that came out in the 90s.
Is it really?
Yeah. And I just had to laugh. I was like, is this guy, is he referencing the book or is he referencing Brady Bunch? Because now I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Man, I should have looked into like the meaning behind that, the name of the title, but I didn't look further into it, but that's really fun. I had no idea.
Yeah. It was like a hugely popular novel. I want to say it came out in the 70s. It was like a pretty big bestseller when it came out. I don't know enough about the book. I can't tell you if the song and the book are related in any way, but yeah, I just kind of had to laugh when I saw it. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, my number one favorite song of the year, "Bad Idea" by Olivia Rodrigo. I just really enjoy her stuff. I don't think there's a bad song on the album. It's just really good. And it's, I don't relate to the stuff because it's very difficult to relate to the music, to the lyrics of a 20-year-old,
yeah, we're not the target demographic for Olivia Rodrigo. Let's just
so I can't relate to it on that ground. But just musically, production wise, her voice, her choice to not do what you would expect her to do coming from that Disney background. They kind of go one of two ways. They just kind of make your standard pop album, or they kind of do the Miley Cyrus thing where they just get fucking coked out of their mind and weird. And she's just like, no, I want to make like 90s rock music. And that's, the first album had a little bit of the Paramore pop punk influence on it. That's pretty much ditched, for the most part on this album. And this song, I think, is, most people would say All American Bitch is probably the best song on the album. Bad Idea, right, just got really stuck in my head and I just couldn't get it out. They're 1A, 1B on the album, for the most part. I didn't put All American, All American Bitch was in my honorable mentions because I just, I wanted to have variety in the top 10. I didn't want to I could have put 5 songs off this album in the top 10, because it's just, it's such a strong record, but I just really like what she's doing, and I wish her nothing but the best. And I hope she continues to make music like this. If not, then hey, we got 2 great albums, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by this album. I didn't go into it expecting to like it as much as I did. Like I think like it definitely feels like an album that could have come out 10 years ago or 20 years ago and it would still sounded just as fresh as it does right now. Like, she's an exceptional songwriter. I think this is also just an incredibly like good sounding album from a production standpoint. Like, everything just sounds like, I might even say it's perfect. Like, it's so well produced, and I just think like all of her songwriting is very, like, yeah, you can make the argument that, like, a lot of this is coming from, a lot of it is a little juvenile, but she's fucking 20. Of course it's going to be like, some of it is going to be kind of like, it sounds like music for, people around her age. And that's totally, like, it doesn't diminish its appeal. Like, I think across the board, like, she's like one of the best, singer songwriters like we have right now. Like, I mean, if anything, she put out an album of like what I would want from like a Taylor Swift album. Like, I think she just does like, she's kind of like this album kind of runs like circles around anything Taylor Swift put out recently. And I was really, really impressed with like how, cause like all the songs go from just being like these fun, like garage rock tracks to just like some really heart-wrenching ballads that like, and she does both of them equally well. So I was really, really super impressed with this album, and I definitely like, I'm gonna keep going back to it because I liked it. That I mean, I was not expecting it to like it as much. I'm clearly not the demographic for it, but like,
Yeah, that's the weird thing is like I'm not. You know, I'm older than you are, so it's like I'm even farther removed from this. But it just hits really good. And Dan Nigro, who did the production, he did Sour, her first album too. You know, he's worked with some really interesting people. He did stuff for Kylie Minogue. He did stuff for Carly Rae Jepsen. He does a lot of Caroline Polachek stuff. You know, he's kind of really. It seems like he and Olivia Rodrigo are pretty much the combination because you know he's whatever he pulls out of her is. I mean, I really hope she brings them back for the next, you know, the next record's gonna be a couple of years away because this thing just came out. But, you know, I hope she kind of keeps, you know, it's rare that you see that relationship anymore. You know, Elton John always had Bernie Taupin, you know, to write the lyrics and he would write the music and you have this decades long relationship that made all this amazing music and people just bounce around all the time. You know, there'll be 15 different producers on a 10-track album. You know, it's like stuff gets you know you find songs where somebody did the verse and somebody else did the chorus, and it's just like, come on, you know. And sometimes it works, it's fine. You can't really tell, but you know, it's like I'd like to see this could be the beginnings of like the landscape of pop music for the next 10 years.
I would agree with that too. Yeah, I think this is like a pretty pivotal pop record across the board. I think a lot of people are gonna like bite this sound pretty hard over the next couple of years just because of how outstanding this album is and how successful it was and how, you know, popular she's become. Like, I think she's really found a good sound that like, I think she could build upon it and still make another great record, but also go in a different direction and still just because like, at the end of the day, she's still just regardless of the sound she's going for, she's a pretty like outstanding songwriter. So I'm really excited to see I went from not really knowing much about her to being like really excited about what she's going to do next. So
yeah, I had never heard of her. Driver's License came out. I didn't particularly care for that song all that much, but once I heard the record as a whole, I was like, holy shit, like this is all right. And then when the second this album came out, I mean, I listened to it at midnight when it released. I was like, I was all in waiting for it.
Yeah, this is truly one of the best albums of the year. Like it definitely deserves to be like top 10 in that conversation. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so my number one song is Morning by Post Malone, which is, I'm surprised that this was, I mean, I've always been a pretty big fan of Post Malone. I think he's just kind of a goofball and he seems just very charming. Like he doesn't have any like delusions of grandeur about what he is or like the music he's putting out. He's just like, I don't know, I'm just a dude. I just want to make, you know, fun tracks. Like I like country music and I like hip hop and I'm trying to find like a fun middle ground between the two while also making some, you know, some fun pop songs here and there. And it all just feels very genuine and it's charming. Even like when a lot of this album, I was not a huge fan of this album. Like, I think there's some highlights on it for sure, but a lot of it, like, even when I wasn't crazy about some of the album, like, this is not the best album he's put out, but it's got a lot of heart. And I found this song to be like definitely like one of the best things he put out from this record. I liked the production of this track. I thought the chorus was very infectious and really charming. And I think a lot of it was, you know, pretty autobiographical for him and personal for him in regards to like, you know, because he's been dealing with a lot of alcoholism and he's also coming to terms with being a new dad. And so this is like a pretty, you know, you're seeing like this song just felt like a really vulnerable and really big, like leap of faith and like a leap of growth, I guess, for Post Malone. And so I became absolutely obsessed with this song and I burned through it like all year. And I just thought it was one of the best things he's put out. Like, it wasn't like, you know, there are things about it where you can say like some aspects of it are a little rough, but again, it all feels genuine. And that's, I mean, I think I can't help but root for the guy, you know? despite everything you could say to like make fun of him or, just kind of write him off as kind of a goof or whatever, I went from just being like, oh, it's some guy just trying to, another guy trying to be a rapper, but like he's outstanding and, represent the hometown too. So that helps.
Yeah. Our city loves to claim him as one of their own. My God. I doubt he has any memories of being here.
I doubt it. Yeah. He left when he was 9?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I won't spend too much time. I don't like this song. I don't particularly care for him as a musician. I can't say I've ever listened to one of his songs that I enjoyed. But I find him a fantastic talent. If you go and listen to the stuff he's been doing with Howard Stern, where every time he goes on, instead of playing his own stuff, he does covers.
Yeah,
his covers of like Alice in Chains and all that stuff are absolutely tremendous. I think it would be a very big disservice if we don't get at least one, like even if it's just an EP of him doing like that Alice in Chains heavy rock kind of stuff with maybe a little bit of country influence in it. I'd like to see that because I think that would be really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
But I find he's an excellent interview. I love watching him anytime he pops up on the stuff that I watch, whether it's, it's an episode of Hot Ones or he did, the interview with the Sunday Conversations thing, where he gets asked about female biology and it's very good. He's always very entertaining.
He's a Magic card now too.
Yeah. Yeah. Also spent $2 million on a Magic card as well. So he's dropping dimes on his commander deck.
If anybody could have like the One Ring Lord of the Rings card, I want it to be Post Malone.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be in safe hands. So, but yeah, I also really like a lot of the covers that he did on Howard Stern. I thought those were pretty fun. And that Hootie and the Blowfish cover was pretty okay. I enjoyed it. So yeah, again, I will always be rooting for that guy in a way that I never expected to. Eventually, I was just like, I think I fucking like Post Malone, and I didn't want to admit it to myself, but I really do. So
yeah. All right, so that wraps up our top 10 songs, and we'll be back in just a moment with the top 10 albums. All right, we are back, and we are going to dive into our top 10 albums. Davis, since I went first last time, why don't you kick things off?
Sure. All right, so my first, my number 10 album is Ganger by a rap artist named V's. So V's is a rapper from, I believe, I'd have to look this up again. I want to say he's from Detroit, but I could be confusing him with somebody else. But he is, yeah, sure, or Babytron of the Shitty Boys,
the Inner City Posse.
That's right. Yes. But no, V's is I thought this, like, as a rapper, like, I found him to be kind of incoherent in a lot of ways that are objectively funny. But also he's got some of like the most insufferable vocal fry I've ever heard. In a way that is just like half the time he just sounds like half asleep at the mic. And I'm just like, his flow is just fucking terrible, but in a way that's like really endearing and kind of just, I just found myself coming back to that record a lot because I'm like, this is all so stupid, but like, I like it a lot. And so I find myself coming back to this record a lot. Like, a lot of his bars are pretty good. Like he's got a good flow for the most part. And like his bars are really funny. Like he almost feels like a joke rapper, but like it feels like there's more technical ability than you would expect from like kind of a joke rapper. A lot of it is just kind of like the sort of like bragging about like how rich I am, how high I'm getting and all this other shit. But like something about this project just kind of had me continually coming back to it. And it's pretty long. It's like a 45, 50 minute album. They just put out a deluxe version that made it even longer. But yeah, I wish I could kind of put my finger on like what made this album compelling, because it's a lot of it is just objectively terrible, but I loved it, and I love this record, and I'd be remiss to not put it on my top 10. Like it made that much of an impression on me. I'm just like, I kept coming back to it, and I don't know why. But
It's always good.
yeah, it's a cool. It's a fun listen if you want some like good goofy jokey hip hop. Like all the beats sound like fucking they were made from like on Fiverr. Like
See the new Froggy Fresh.
yeah, basically. Yeah. And yeah, so I think the record is charming. It's a lot of it's one of the more fun hip hop albums I've listened to this year. And I've listened to a lot of hip hop albums that ranged from like fun to like underwhelming to like just the most dark and like, you know, horrifying sound I've heard like all year in ways that are really interesting. But like, yeah, this was probably the most fun I had listening to a hip hop album this year for sure. In terms of dumb fun, like another record on this list was also very fun, but yeah, that was it's not like a, in terms of like, hey, check this out. I would say it's not like it's more of like a check this shit out in terms of like,
yeah,
you check this shit out. This is ridiculous. So it's more of that kind of check it out, and that's how I'd recommend it for sure.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. So before I get into number 10, I'll burn through my handful of honorable mentions. 10,000 Gex by Hunter Gex. I like this a lot better than the first album that they did. Just a lot of fun. Very digestible, easy to listen to. Put it on repeat and it still sounds fresh, you know, after listening to it multiple times. Just really solid stuff. I've tried everything but Therapy Part 1 by Teddy Swims. Just one of the best voices in music right now. You know, if you like R&B, you know, you like the smooth jams, you know, he's the guy to go to these days. Pretty Vicious by the Struts. I love the Struts. They are, you know, a throwback to bands like the Rolling Stones. But I really enjoy what they do. And anytime there's a new album by them, I certainly pay attention. Stone by Baroness. Definitely not one of their best albums, but even, you know, a not great Baroness album is still very, very good. You know, an enjoyable listen. Not one song that stands out, but I think if you listen to the album as a whole, it just is one singular kind of piece of music. It really is really an enjoyable listen. And then American Gothic by Wayfarer. I found them when they were listed as Red Dead Redemption 2 black metal.
Sure.
And their song or the album is American Gothic. And yeah, it sounds like that. It sounds like black metal meets Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, it is that. And it's good. Like it's solid record.
Yeah.
All right. My number 10, Terrasite by Cattle Decapitation. I've never been like the biggest Cattle Decapitation fan. You know, I always thought they were perfectly fine. I've seen them live and they were enjoyable live. And, you know, Travis's vocals are definitely not for everybody. He has a very, very deep guttural, growling, you know, voice. But on this album, he implements a lot of super bizarre, high pitched screams that are just like otherworldly. And I don't know if I would say they're good, but they fit the music really well. And I think like kind of like what you said with your album, like I just kept coming back to it. Like there's just something there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just ended up listening to it a bunch. You know, I thought this year was super weak for death metal. I thought it was a really, really weak year for death metal. I know everybody and their mother was going on about that Tomb Mold album that came out. Anthony Fantano was drooling all over it. I listened to the album twice. I didn't think that album was very good. No. It's like, I don't know. I guess I'm just not seeing what everybody else is seeing in this. But
yeah, I listened to that album and I thought it was like, I'm not as well versed in death metal as you are, but I thought it had some ideas, but like, yeah, the vocals of that album were they wore on me after a little while.
Yeah.
But I had some ideas for sure. But yeah, I still have more questions about, like, you know, I want to ask you more like what death metal to get into, because I definitely appreciate death metal and I would like to get more into it.
Yeah, it all depends on like what style you want. If you want melodic death metal, or if you want just like the Cannibal Corpse Florida style, it's so weird to call Cannibal Corpse a Florida band because they're from Buffalo, but you know, they really, you know, kind of took that Florida style of death metal and made it their own. So no, you know, it depends on kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm sure I could go with that.
We will get you introduced to the Black Dahlia murder and you'll have a good time.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so my number 9 album is Voir Dire by Earl Sweatshirt and The Alchemist. So this album had a bit of a confusing rollout. It was it was released as an NFT, unfortunately, and the version that was released as an NFT is significantly different track list wise than the version that ended up on Spotify a couple months later.
Was that like because of some exclusivity thing?
I want to say it's because of sample clearance, because there's some
okay.
pretty like blatant samples that probably couldn't be cleared like otherwise, so they just decided to release it this way. I think the NFT version is like outstanding. I like the streaming version too. Like some of the songs aren't as good, but a lot of the same songs are there. But yeah, I've been a really diehard Earl Sweatshirt fan ever since I heard him back when Odd Future started popping off.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about him for years. You've definitely been listening to him for a long time.
Yeah, like he's always like he's pretty consistently in my top artists that I listen to, and he's just got a great flow. I think his wordplay is really amazing. I think like a lot of his wordplay is very clever, and I think this has been kind of a project that has been teased for a long time, because like people have been wanting him to work with The Alchemist for years now, and we finally got it. And I think it lived up to just about every expectation we had for it. Like all the beat, like it just sounds like all the beats that were made for this project fit really well for what he's going for. I think that this just felt like a really good album in a series of pretty good like EPs leading up to this throughout the past few years, because he hasn't really put out like a full length, like longer than like 25-30 minutes like project since I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, which was 2015 at this point. So it's been a long time, but we've still gotten consistently like high quality material since then. And I think this definitely is just another one of that. And I think the Alchemist production, like No Surprise, is still fantastic, and just a really great, one of the best hip hop albums of the year for sure.
Yeah. All right. My number 9 is Saved with an exclamation point by the Reverend Kristen Michael Hayter. Kristen Michael Hayter, probably best known under the name Lingua Ignota.
Right.
She has retired that project a couple years ago, and this is what she is doing now. This is traditional evangelical Christian music. She is taking hymns and gospels that are used in modern day or in traditional evangelical Christian music and singing them, and also writing her own. It is 100% of religious album. I mean, this is a Southern Christian album, and it is the weirdest fucking album I have heard in years. It was all done with a 4-track recorder, which they then just abused the shit out of. And I mean, it sounds like an old album, and I don't mean like it sounds like an old album like they put some record scratch noises on it, with a VST. Like this sounds like an old album because it was recorded kind of like they would record, with no budget back then. It is a bizarre album. But it's very interesting. The Lingua Ignota, it's sad that's over with. But I think she had a lot of, she needed that part of her life to end with all this kind of stuff that she went through. So, I cannot tell if she is taking this serious. She is taking this serious enough that she got ordained and is an actual reverend now.
Wow.
Yes. But I genuinely cannot tell if she is like a born again Christian or an evangelical Christian now, and that's why she's doing this. Like I genuinely can't tell. And that just adds to the weirdness of it all.
I can imagine. What would you say like the ratio between like original songs and covers is on this album? Do you think it's like kind of half and half?
I think there's more traditionals on it than there are her originals.
Okay.
If I remember right, traditional's not the word. Not standards is always used for jazz, but I mean it's like they're not all hymnal, hymns. Like some of them are well-known Christian music. Like stuff you would hear in a church down south, like stuff you might recognize from movies or TV or whatever. But you really can't tell the difference between those and the originals. I mean, she really kind of nails that style.
Cool. Yeah, this record seems cool from everything I heard about it, just like how it was recorded and the circumstances around it. Like this seems like a really interesting album, and I do want to check this out. So it is on my list. But yeah, because I the Lingua Ignota albums are intense, difficult listens that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see what she's doing now. That's cool. Like I want to hear it for sure.
Yeah, it was odd because her voice kind of, I always kind of compared to Lana Del Rey, and I really like Lana Del Rey. I didn't like There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard as much as everybody else did.
Yeah.
But that album just straight up, I mean, her religious stuff is really shining through. That album straight up just has a track that's just a sermon. She just recorded the church she was at and like just put it as a track on the album. It's just like, all right.
That's cool. Like, yeah, definitely on my list. I do want to check this out for sure. Okay, so my number 8 album is Kimochi Season by a Japanese group called Lucky Kilimanjaro. So a lot of this stuff is a lot of like J-pop that's like pretty influenced by Shibuya Kai, which is like a form of like early 2000s electronic music and complex like IDM meets pop music. So a lot of stuff that you would hear, a lot of energy of this album is a lot of stuff that I feel like I would hear in like a Jet Grind Radio soundtrack. Like just a lot of that, just like really high energy, off the wall production. And this is just a really fun, really well produced pop album. There's some really, really amazing production on this album. Like it's a group of, I think, like 6 people, and they but it's just a lot of really great, a lot of fun plays on like pop music tropes. Like a lot of like, there's like a like disco adjacent track. There's like stuff that sounds like old, like, adult contemporary kind of stuff. Like, and I think every single time it always does something new or interesting, like with a lot of these like conventional pop styles, and reframes them in a way that's like a lot of fun and just a really good, like feel good record. Like one of the stronger, I found out about these guys through Porter Robinson. And I listened to this record for a good, like 3 months straight and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. And yeah, I think it's well worth checking out if you're into like, you want something a little that deviates a little bit like further from the J-pop template. And it's just like a good energy. I would even describe this as like Katamari Damacy energy, like a lot of that kind of energy as well. Like just the upbeat, ridiculous, bonkers, music from Katamari Damacy. And so it reminded me of 2 of my favorite games. So I just found myself coming back to this record a lot. So highly recommend it for that.
Yeah, I think the way you described it, I think I'm definitely gonna put it on my list to check out.
Yeah, highly recommend it. It's good stuff. So
all right, my number 8 is The Rime of Memory by Panopticon, a long-running solo American black metal project. Very atmospheric, very ambient at times. Another one of those albums where there's no one particular track. It's really a thing that you put on and listen to from start to finish. I found myself, in my personal life, was taking these classes this year, so I was doing a lot of studying. I like to have music playing while I'm studying, but I traditionally like to have music that I'm not familiar with because I don't want to get distracted by singing along or thinking about it. And I put this album on when it came out, and it was just like the perfect kind of like mood kind of thing. And then I ended up just going back and listening to it a few more times. There are some really memorable guitar riffs on this. And I was never a huge fan. Like I'd listened to Panopticon stuff before in the past, but it certainly like wasn't among my go-tos if I was going to listen to some black metal. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it's just a really nice package from start to finish.
Cool. Yeah, that's I definitely. You said it's more black metal, right? Because I think I've
heard atmospheric black. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because black metal has become such a broad term now that it's been reduced to. I mean, you got like the genre purists, and then you got people who are just like, this is not black metal. But that whole conversation is just so boring that like, as long as you like it, that's what matters. But like this, I've heard bits and pieces of this record, and it seems like something I would definitely enjoy. Like my only experience with like modern day like black metal, I feel like has been like Darkthrone and like Xasthur.
Yeah, it's very well. This would be more closer to Xasthur than Darkthrone.
Okay, so I definitely want to give this a listen because it sounds cool, and they've been doing this project for a while. I'm assuming,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
So definitely check that out. Okay, my number 7 is the April Mixtape 3 by Snow Strippers. This is the Crystal Castles sounding kind of electronic duo that we mentioned in our Song of the Year. And this mixtape had a lot of really good tracks on it. A lot of like interesting production choices too. Like there were like a lot of songs that just feel like they were just like cut up with like little, little DJ hits of just like what almost felt like little like inside jokes, like goofs. Like there's just like little things where like the sound will completely cut out and it'll just be like edit or something, just little things like that where it's just like they do some really interesting, like fun, silly, like cutaways between songs. It almost sounds like this was like haphazardly thrown together like a mixtape would be. But again, a lot of the songwriting I think really kind of shines through with a lot of this stuff. Like it's got a lot of the same, like you're dealing with a lot of the same like nostalgic sounds of like late 90s, early 2000s trance, and a lot of like the same kind of like understated vocal delivery and just a lot of really pounding, just 909 kicks and just all that kind of stuff. So really good project overall. I think they've put out consistently high quality work this year, and I found myself coming back to this record quite a bit. So definitely worth checking out if you like the other stuff you've heard from them.
Yeah, it's at the top of my list of stuff to listen to. I imagine either tonight or tomorrow I'll be digging into it.
Yeah.
All right. My number 7, the album Again by The Ongoing Concept. This is a really interesting, pardon the pun, but a really interesting concept for an album. So the band has a bizarre history. It was made up of brothers, all the brothers except for one left, leading Dawson Schultz, the remaining member, to essentially continue the band as a solo project. And then, he hired a band to back him up. And then they put out an album under that lineup, did some touring. You and I actually went to go see them on that tour. And then they kind of disappeared for a little bit. And this band, even when they were like an active band, would kind of disappear for years at a time. And they always had really interesting ideas. Like they had their best album to me is this album called Handmade. And it's called Handmade because they legitimately made all the instruments. They made the guitars that they used to record. They made the drum set that they used to record. I
remember even seeing them on stage. They had all those homemade instruments too, and that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and so Again is back with the original lineup plus one of the guys remaining from when Dawson was doing it as kind of a solo thing. So all the brothers are back together, and they took a bunch of songs that they have written on previous albums and essentially made sequels to all of them. Wow. Some of them will borrow a lyric or a line. Some of them will borrow a riff or an overall motif, but they are all new original songs. But you can, if you play the original and then the sequel, you can kind of see where it came from. And it's like a really interesting idea for an album. And it sounds like it wouldn't work, but it really does. And I just really enjoyed what they did from start to finish. And I hope, they kind of start the band up full time again. They've been doing a little bit of touring. They live in the middle of nowhere. I think they're in Idaho. And so they never really did a lot of touring, even when they were like signed on a big label and all this stuff when they first came out. They blew up. They're like one of the first like viral, when all like viral music stuff was in its infancy. They were really one of the first viral bands. They recorded a music video at an elementary school and had all the kids, sing along with it and all this stuff. And the video went mainstream and kind of thrust them into the spotlight for a little bit. But yeah, just a really interesting idea for a record. I always love what they do. They always do something different. And just cool to have them back. I'm glad that they're doing stuff again.
Yeah, I remember being pretty impressed with their performance when we saw them. I know that was like they performed to like a crowd of 10. I couldn't remember the band that opened for them. And
Yeah, I don't
then
remember either.
as soon as they left, like it was just like they kind of performed with the lights on, and like one of the guys had like a broken hand, like he was still playing bass with a broken hand, and I was just like, these guys are crushing it. And I remember actually I liked that Handmade record too, because I ended up buying a copy when we were at the show.
Yeah.
I liked that record quite a bit. So yeah, I'm glad they're back doing it, and it's cool. I mean, I think it's really interesting when bands revisit their own songs and try to either remake them or sometimes it goes great, and sometimes it's like just you get the Dark Side of the Moon, like Redux or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's cool. I want to check out the record again and just see like what, see how the song's different from what I remember. Cause yeah, that first record I heard was great. Okay. So my number 6 is 10,000 Gex by 100 Gex. This record is just insanity. I remember liking the first 100 Gex project quite a bit, but this record just kind of, I think, felt like there were parts of that record that definitely felt like pretty obnoxious and or kind of cringe. They were just kind of purposely being like edgy in a way that was a little irritating. But I think they really fleshed out their sound with this record, and they really tightened up their songwriting, but they still maintain like the same like sense of humor and the same like sense of playfulness and production like quality that like made their first record so compelling. And this is just a lot of fun. It's a really fun. There's like zero fat on this record. Like everything is just, all these songs like have really interesting ideas, and like they are all super diverse. Like there's fucking ska, there's a ska song on the record, and there's just like all of it just sounds so silly, but they sound like they're having so much fun, and I just got so much just joy out of this record, and it's so silly and it's so over the top, but it never feels exhausting, and it makes me that much more excited for like what they're going to do next, because like I think I admire their ability to just commit to like the most ridiculous ideas, whether or not they work out. They always still sound like they're having fun, and so I really enjoyed this record for that.
Yeah, I think they have I don't mean this in a derogatory, but they have this like immaturity. I liken them to like they are the like Jackass of music.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely that sense of like, they're just like, yeah, they're goofing off, and they're just kind of, but there's so much skill there despite all that. It's kind of hard to just like,
and I think the reason why I kind of think of them as the Jackass of music is because, like Jackass, the TV show, anybody can fall down and film it, right? And there's a lot of people making this kind of like internet themed hyper pop, right? But there's always going to be the one person or the one group that does it the best. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what they are. Like they have a lot of imitators, but nobody can quite do it like the way that they do it.
100%. Yeah. And that shines through. Like, I mean, they're producing for other artists now. Like their influence is like everywhere now. Like, and I think that, I just think this is a really exciting follow up. And I think it played to a lot of like what they do really well. And it was exciting. It was just a really fun, like, it's not trying to be like this high art thing. It's just a really fun, like exciting, interesting record. So really, really dug this record. So.
Alrighty, my number 6 is A Little Touch of Schleicher in the Night by Katie von Schleicher. This is like I guess you would call it like an easy listening record, like light rock. Like you'd kind of hear this in the 70s or even like into the 80s, like almost like yacht rock, but not as, it sounds weird to describe it, not as like energetic as yacht rock. Like
you call it like adult contemporary?
Yeah, it's like adult. It's just like very soft, very light, very easy to listen to.
Mhm.
but I just kept listening to it like on repeat. I listened to this album like 10 times.
Mhm.
Like it's just something about it. She's a very nice voice and high level musicians and very nice layering of the instruments. And,
Mhm.
it's just a really well made album. And she has like 4,000 listeners on Spotify. Like she is not like
She sounded familiar. Like I don't know where I'd heard.
she
that
was in
name.
a band. Oh God, what was the name of it? She was in a band before doing the solo stuff. Called Wilder Maker. She is the keyboardist and co-lead vocalist of Wilder Maker.
I don't know if I've heard of them.
Neither have I. They put out an album in 2018 and an album in 2020. This is her 5th or 6th. Oh no, maybe even 7th solo album. So she's been doing the solo stuff for a while. I never heard of her. She just popped up on the Pitchfork. Like they didn't. I don't even think they were. I think they eventually reviewed the album, but I just saw it on the. Here's the list of stuff that's coming out this week, and I was like, oh well, I don't know. I need something to listen to. I'll listen to this, and I just really liked it.
Yeah, I like adult contemporary, so I would like to check that out. It sounds like something that would be, I would like to. I always could use more smooth, like light rock listening.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely give that a listen because I hadn't even heard of her up until this point. So that sounds good. Okay, so my number 5 is Maps by Billy Woods. So Billy Woods is a rapper. He's been doing this for quite a long time now. He's definitely one of the more what people have been describing as left field hip hop. So he's like one of the more like abstract lyricists, and he always works with a lot of like really interesting like producers and like works over a lot of really interesting beats. He's also one half of a group called Arm & Hammer, who also put out another really excellent hip hop album this year. But yeah, this album centers like a lot of the stories around in this album like center around his experiences like touring and being just a touring musician and touring rapper. I found a lot of the beats on this thing to just be like really, really haunting and really just really unsettling in a way that I really got into. Even just a lot of like the lyrics themselves are also pretty unsettling. Like he delves into some really, really heavy stuff on this album. And I found myself coming back to this album a lot. It's got a lot of really good features on it too. Like there's Danny Brown on it, and then A$AP Rock is a feature too. Like just across the board, just really, really excellent, like abstract hip hop. And I loved this album, and I came back to it constantly for months. And so I think Billy Woods is one of the most underrated rappers like in the game right now. I think he's just his wordplay is just impeccable. So if you like dark hip hop, and you're like your hip hop a little weirder, this is an album you have to check out for sure. So.
Yeah, I did not like the Arm & Hammer album, but I did like this. I thought this was pretty solid, and I ended up listening to it a few times. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'd say the Arm & Hammer album is a lot more challenging of a listen. It's a lot more abstract, and the beats are a lot weirder.
Yeah, I've come to discover that I just really don't like that abstract hip hop stuff, which I was surprised because I don't like Danny Brown's solo stuff, but I actually liked his solo album that he put out this year. I just listened to it a few days ago, and I actually thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I really like that album too. So.
All right. My number 5 is Spine by Mirkur. Talked a lot about Mirkur in the top 10 songs, so I won't repeat myself, but really good. A nice kind of return to form with her after her last album was all traditional folk music. This brings the electric instruments back into the fold. Really solid drumming throughout, excellent vocal harmonies, and her particular cadences and patterns that she uses throughout the record. She's a really talented vocalist, and I love the Mirkur stuff a lot. And not that I didn't like the folk album, it was fine, but it's not one that I'm going to go back to, like I have her other stuff. So it's nice to just kind of have something that's a little bit more similar to what she did in the past, but definitely, bringing in kind of some of that dream pop elements to it and doing some different stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Do you feel like this is like one of the is like the best place to start in her discography, or you think elsewhere would be?
I think it might be weird to start with this, because then if you go and listen to the stuff that's like way more black metal, you'll be like, wait, what? Like, I think it'd be more interesting to almost listen to it in order to see the journey.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like in that kind of way. I think you could probably skip the first album. It's just called M. Which, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But the second album, Marit, I think that's like the classic Myrkur sound to me, at least.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I do want to give it a listen, because like everything you described about it sounds right up my alley. Okay, so my number 4 album is Lahai by Sampha. This is the first Sampha album that we've gotten in about 6 years. His last album came out in 2017, and that was my album of the year for that year. That album was like a pretty heartbreaking exploration of he had lost both of his parents to cancer, and so he was just kind of like navigating that sense of grief. And he also discovered that like he was also, he found like a lump in his throat that he wasn't, that he was also, concerned that was going to be cancer as well. So this is his like processing all of that throughout that album. And now this album definitely feels like he's grown a lot since that previous record. And this one is more of an exploration of, he recently became a dad. So it's just like a lot of him just navigating like his sense of place in the world and his sense of purpose now that he has a daughter. It's just a really beautiful R&B album, like a lot of really great ideas, a lot of really great production across the board. Like I said earlier, like every time he's like found himself on like as a feature on a track, he's always just like stolen the show. Like his voice is impeccable. And he has just got a lot of really, really great, like a really great ear for production and for composition, and like a lot of good ideas for like just giving these tracks breathing room and like filling them with a lot of stuff, but never making them feel just like overproduced or bloated. Like he's a really, really incredible songwriter, and he's just consistently had really amazing ideas. And so I like this record a lot. It felt like him, like if the last record was him just trying to like process grief, I think a lot of this record was him really healing from it and just like kind of figuring out where to go next from that. And I think it's a really good extension of that first album, but like in a much, he definitely feels like he's coming out of that really bad period of his life. And so I liked it a lot. So.
Yeah. I mean, probably better than my method of dealing with grief. I just don't.
Just same. Really.
Sometimes I scream in a closet.
Also, yeah. So, I'm with you for sure. Yeah.
All right, my number 4 is once again an album called Again. Real original, guys. This is again by Oneohtrix Point Never. I've always enjoyed his music. It's not ever really been at the top of my list any particular year when he released an album or an EP or whatever it may be, but I always found it quite enjoyable. It's great music to kind of just vibe out to. I have a lot of his stuff on vinyl, so I could just pop it on and read a book or whatever it may be and just kind of enjoy it. But something about this album, I think it might be his best album. I just really, really enjoyed it. From start to finish, and a lot of interesting noises throughout, a lot of interesting sounds. Some of it feels like it almost doesn't work, and then you just kind of keep listening, and it just like eventually kind of comes around, and it's like, oh no, I guess I'm kind of into this now. And it's just, it's just a lot of textures being all just, it's like the album is almost kind of like a car crash. It's just a lot of stuff thrown together, but he makes it work. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that is definitely a recurring theme throughout his discography of just like, it's so many ideas that on paper shouldn't work together at all. But once you kind of like, you take a few listens to unpack all of it, you realize there's some real amazing composition going on here. Like there's some really amazing ideas. And I think this record is definitely, I had a hard time pushing this record out of my top 10. Like it's definitely in my top 20. But there's just so many good albums that came out this year. This album was again, another just, like, cause people I think really expected him to do like a lot of the stuff that he did with his early records where it was just like all minimal Juno, like synth arpeggios and drones and all that stuff. And that stuff is still great, but he has consistently managed to subvert expectations with every new album, but still sound like it's an OPN record. And they're even if I'm not always like crazy about them, they're always interesting and compelling. And he's got a lot of really amazing ideas. So you can kind of see why, his records have endured as much as they have. Like he's still, like, in my opinion, one of the most important artists, like, in electronic music right now. Like he worked with The Weeknd. Like he's obviously, his influences, has surpassed like outside of like the niche he's created for himself.
I mean, he's doing like movie scores and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's, I think his influence is everywhere. And like, he's just, this is another chapter and just another, a truly amazing discography. So I also thought this was an outstanding record. So it rightfully deserves its place on your list or any list for albums of this year. Okay. So my number 3 album of this year was Space Heavy by King Krule. Now, King Krule is a singer-songwriter from, I believe it's London, and he has been producing like a lot of like bedroom pop sort of stuff, like kind of like, but like meets like post-punk sort of music for about a decade now. Like he was kind of a Pitchfork darling like in the early 2010s, and then he put out a few albums since then that have been mostly pretty positively received. And so I hadn't really dove into his discography all that much, but something about this record I decided to check out. Like I heard like one of the singles from it and really, really enjoyed it. So I'm like, I want to check out the rest of this record. And this is, again, another record where he's coming to terms with being a new father. And he is, a lot of it is just like navigating the existential dread and depression and ennui that kind of comes with like having like no sense of direction or purpose in your life, but then still just finding reasons to keep moving forward. And now he literally has a reason to keep moving forward because he has a family. And so it is, it's a really interesting exploration of that, while also just being some pretty pleasant, like, rock and post-rock kind of post-punk kind of stuff. And his vocal delivery has always been pretty pretty monotone and kind of like a droll. Like he'll go from just like kind of being mopey to just being like to having a pretty piercing scream. But yeah, I really enjoyed this record. It's very sad and it's not exactly an easy listen, but where I'm at now, I was just kind of like, this is the vibe I really needed right now. So it explores depression and like existential dread without necessarily wallowing in it. It definitely feels like it's a record that's trying to like find your way through it and navigate through it in a cathartic and healthy way, as opposed to just being like everything is shit. So I like it for that.
Yeah.
So great record.
All right. My number 3, Scaring the Hose by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown. I am super picky with hip hop. I just really am. There's no other way to really put it. I don't relate to it at all from a personal perspective. I have zero desire in listening to music that's about partying and getting high and, all that stuff. And it's really been nice to see that once all of that kind of settled in the 2000s, your 50 Cents and all that kind of stuff faded away. And now we're starting to see the kind of the rise of like alternative hip hop and people getting back to having, the music be more about their personal struggles and things like that. We've seen like the rise of Kendrick Lamar over the past decade and all this stuff. I really find myself being a little bit more drawn to the genre again. And the person I have probably enjoyed the most has been JPEG Mafia. I really like what Peggy does. And Danny Brown, I could take or leave.
Really?
I watch Danny Brown's podcast from time to time. It's pretty good. He actually did an episode of Code Orange where he interviewed him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, I like him. Like seems like a pretty chill dude, but I just never really liked his style of stuff. So I was kind of concerned. I was like, oh, am I going to like half this album and not the other? Like, but they play really well together. Like they really balance each other out. And it's just a fantastic record from start to finish. I liked the counterpart, the side EP that they put out after the fact. It's definitely, you can tell that stuff was probably cut, for good reason. I think it would have added some maybe not so great tracks to this album as a whole, but this was really good stuff. I really liked it.
Yeah. So continue on that, because this is my number 2 album. So I also was obsessed with this record when I first heard it. I think some of the beats on this thing just sound unhinged and broken in ways that are just, this whole record just sounds like it is. I remember reading something that said like this whole record sounds like it was being made while they were just like on the run from like something, like they were in the middle of a car chase while making this, and they feel like there's just a sense of urgency there, and like a sense of just like, like it is so just filled to the brim with ideas, and so just it moves along at such a breakneck pace that like, it's, I also had like just a ton of fun with this record. Like it's such a great energy. They play off each other so well. The beats are like I said, just crazy. Like some of the sample flips, I'm just like, who in their right mind would even sample this?
Excellent uses of samples throughout. So, it's very good.
Yeah. And so I thought it was so much fun for that in that regard. And again, like I think they like JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown definitely have like some similarities, like as rappers, like in terms of like what they rap about and like their, but at the same time, they think they're different enough to like complement each other in a really interesting way here. And yeah, I was just so obsessed with this record for most of this year. And like a lot of my top songs in my top 10 were actually from this record. So yeah, just great hip hop. But this is, in my opinion, the best hip hop album of the year.
Yeah.
By a mile. I was just like, nothing is even going to come close to this. So yeah, I'm really excited to see if they work together again. But even if they don't, like, I think this is just a really amazing project for both of them. So
yeah, I was really surprised. Because professional wrestling will latch on to anything that references it at all. I think it's within the first 3 lines of the first track on the record. JPEG drops a reference to Tony Khan, the owner of AEW. It's like, how do you not get them to go and do something? Like, get them on television. Like, just have Danny Brown high out of his fucking mind, like arguing with another wrestler. And you have a wrestler on your roster who is blowing up right now with a huge viral rap song, and you have this big, album of the year rap album where that's referencing your company. Like, come on, get him out of there, Yeah,
and it's not the only time they reference wrestling on the album.
Oh no, not at all. Yeah.
Was there like a Brock Lesnar sample where it's just like "Party's over, Grandpa"?
Yeah.
On record.
It's like AEW had Bow Wow on television within the last year. Like, we're scraping the bottom of the fucking barrel here. Where this dragged him out of Tokyo Drift. And like,
they also, I mean, I know you're not a huge fan, but they also had West Side Gun like show up on AEW.
That's because they're personal friends with some of the roster. But it was just like, I was just like, come on, like we gotta get some stuff going here. I want to see a tag team match with Danny Brown fighting somebody.
Oh man, okay, good money for that.
They got Action Bronson to do a match, so. Oh
my god, that's fantastic! I'm sure that was magical.
He did fine actually.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I believe it. Fine. Yeah, he's very He would seem like he would be a lot of fun to watch. Just do wrestling of any kind. So yeah, I get it.
All right, so my number 2, So Much for Stardust, the Fall Out Boy album. I won't rehash what I said in the previous list, but when your favorite band makes a record that sounds like the music that they were making, or at least closer to it when you fell in love with them. It's kind of hard to not, really, fall in love with them all over again. And this album is just really solid from start to finish, aside from the weird Ethan Hawke monologue thing.
Yeah, that felt weird.
Other than that, very, very good. Some really standout tracks that I think are going to be staples, in their live set for years to go. But yeah, just really, really solid record. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed this album too. Like, because I wasn't crazy. I mean, obviously Mania was just was confounding in so many ways, but like the previous records before that, I never really felt as into them as I did since like Infinity on High and Back. Like, I think that was like those albums, that like 3-album run was just incredible. But I mean, there was stuff in between there that was great, of course, but like this definitely felt like it harkened back to like the best eras of their career, and it was just an outstanding record for sure. So.
Yeah, I was when American Beauty, American Psycho came out, which I really did not particularly care for that album at all, because that's when they went full on just pop music with like Centuries and all that stuff. I was actually I was doing a side job at the time. I was reviewing albums for a website, and they were, they always had like a hopper of here's what's coming out, who wants to grab the review. And I was like, well, my favorite band's Fall Out Boy, so I'll take the Fall Out Boy review. And they're like, okay, cool. So I write the review and I send it off to the editor, and he comes back. He's like, are you sure you like this band? And I was like, well, I sure as shit don't like this album. I can tell you that. He was like, I mean, if this is what you want to put out, we'll put it out. And like, it's like, all right. I mean, that's how I feel,
Yeah, it's valid. Yeah. Sometimes your favorite band just puts out a middling album, and like
the last line on my review for that album was, hey, they'll at least still play the old stuff live. And I thought that just kind of summed up that middle part of Fall Out Boy's career really well.
I would agree with that. Yeah, that's kind of, you could say that about a lot of bands from like bands that had their peak around the same time they did.
Yeah,
like for sure. Okay, well, my number one album is Census Designated by Jane Remover.
Very good album.
Incredible album. I was such a big fan of Frailty, their previous album, and this album is a substantially like huge sonic departure from that. Like, there are definitely some elements that get retained, but this is very much like a grunge / shoegaze album, as opposed to like an IDM like electronic album. This is what Frailty was. But yeah, just a really this album is also quite long. It's about an hour long, and like there's just a lot of songs that definitely like feel stretched out and spread out in ways where, I could definitely see this being a pretty slow and difficult listen for a lot of people. But I think all the songs like definitely take their time to unravel, and really you definitely notice a lot more details as they as you listen to them a few more times. And I think she's become like a really tremendous songwriter. Like, a lot of these songs are like incredibly personal and incredibly, she's dealing with some very, very difficult situations, and that are all come from like, her personal life. And so it's become it's a hard record to go back to a lot, but like, I also know that, I mean, just how personal it was for her and how cathartic this was for her to make. And I just think that she's grown so much in the few years that she's been putting out music. And I think this is just a really powerful and like amazing record that I don't have a lot of like big criticisms of it. I think some of the production can be a little grating, just because it's a little, some of the texture she deals with can be pretty loud and pretty, sonically punishing. But like, I think that's, if you're predisposed to that kind of music, then like it shouldn't bother you too much. But I can definitely see that rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. But
yeah, I was kind of surprised when I heard some of that stuff on the record, because in the little like blurb about the record that when I saw it was coming out, and I was like, oh, that's, the way they described it in the little write up, it was just a little paragraph. I was like, oh, that sounds like something I might like, atmospheric or whatever. And it did not make any mention of that other kind of side of having that harshness to it. So I was kind of surprised when it first hit, and I was like, oh wow, this is like more than I thought it was going to be. And I just I probably, if it just kept that kind of like lightness to it, I probably would have turned it off after a couple of tracks. But I think having that balance between the two and having that other side of it makes it a really compelling listen. And, it is long, it's over an hour long, but it didn't feel like, when I put it on, it didn't feel like a slog to get through or anything.
Yeah, definitely not. It's definitely just it's an album that it is very emotionally heavy and sad. So I think you definitely have to be in sort of a mindset for it. But I think it is definitely a very rewarding listen if you have the patience for it and you are in that and you're willing to engage with just how emotionally heavy of an album it is. I think it's definitely the best thing I've heard this year, or at least the most, the thing that hit me the hardest. I think it was the most emotionally just impactful. So
yeah,
just incredible album.
All right, my number one. We won't spend much time with it because we already discussed it quite a bit. Guts by Olivia Rodrigo. Just a phenomenal pop album from start to finish. One of those albums where you could probably throw a dart at the track list and release it as a single and it would do very well. Just really like everything about it. It's just great.
Yeah, honestly, after I listened to it, I was just like, man, I have no notes. That album was outstanding. It was just a front to back. There's no real standout moment of just being like, man, she just kind of phoned this one in. Everything just feels fully realized and just incredibly well written. And she even quotes in one of the songs of just I don't want to just be good for my age. Cause she's good for her age, but also these songs would be amazing from anybody at any age, really. I think she just does a really good job of capturing, where she's at in her life. And, it all comes across incredibly genuine and incredibly sincere, and just this really just felt like a fully realized, fully fleshed out project. And it was excellent. I really have no notes about it. It's just it's really a really incredibly well done pop record. Probably the best of the year if I had to pick one. Honestly.
Yeah. I'm really curious. She's does a really good job with the limited life experience she has. She's very young. So I'm kind of curious, man, what is she going to have to use 10 years from now? When you really become an adult and have the weight of adulthood weigh down on you. And obviously she's going to handle it a lot differently than you or I, because she's rich and famous and all that. But, emotions are emotions, they're a human thing, not a financial thing. And I'm really curious to see what she's going to be singing about, a decade from now.
Agreed. So, yeah, fantastic album.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up the music portion of things, and we are going to be back in just a moment with our video game awards. All right, we are back, and it is now time to get into the video game portion of our show. And I want to give a preface, because we're going to do our awards and also our personal top 10 list. This is your spoiler warning. It's the end of the year. We're going to talk about our favorite games. We're going to talk about those moments from the games. We can no longer be handcuffed by spoilers. So this is just a general overall warning for, any game could appear on this list. Any game could appear on this list. We will spoil the shit out of it for you.
Right.
So we actually just have a list of games that came out and their endings, and we're just going to read what happens in every single game. And that's what we're doing. But no, we just give you the heads up. We're going to talk about the end of Starfield. We're going to talk about the end of Spider-Man. We're going to talk about the end of whatever weird JRPG Davis played. So we, it's just, a warning, just in general that, that stuff is going to be fair game in here. So, good. All right, we are going to kick things off with our awards. Davis, what is our first category?
All right, our first category is coolest feature. So our nominees are Alan Wake 2's Mind Place, Spider-Man 2's Webline, Starfield's New Game Plus, and Viewfinder's Camera.
And our winner, Starfield's New Game Plus. So probably the least impactful of all of this is Spider-Man 2's Webline. Just a new mechanic in the game, but it completely changes the way you can traverse and do stealth in that game. Just a really smart addition to the game. Alan Wake 2's Mind Place I thought was a really interesting concept. It's just, visualizes everything for you. The little things you find along the way, the documents you find, the manuscript pages, it just organizes it in this visual way. Instead of just being a menu, it turns what would be just like codex entries in an RPG into a physical manifestation. Those manuscript pages are in a physical file cabinet that you have to open and pull out and see, and you see the images of the pages. And I just thought it was a really interesting thing. Viewfinder's Camera, obviously Viewfinder is not going to have the cultural impact that Portal did, but Viewfinder's Camera is the coolest puzzle game mechanic since the Portal gun. Like, no doubt about it. But our winner, Starfield's New Game Plus, the way they handled New Game Plus is really interesting. You make a choice at the end of that game whether or not you want to, essentially what it really boils down to is, do you want to just keep your current save file and just go back into the open world and just, do whatever missions you missed or whatever, or do you want to start the game over again? But when you start the game over again, you have all of the knowledge of what happened previously, and there are new conversations that you can be had, and you don't have to play the whole game again. They give you a choice. Do you want to start this game over from scratch and have all the side quests and all that stuff there? Or do you just want to do the main storyline? And that's why you hear these people say, well, I'm on my 7th New Game Plus of Starfield. That makes it sound like they've put 700 hours into this game. But you can do a New Game Plus run in about 45 minutes. And every time you do it, something new may happen. That universe might not be the same one you return to. So they do some really cool stuff there. And I think it's, New Game Plus has just been a standard thing in video games for a very long time. And this is the first time anybody's done some real innovation on it. And I think it deserved to be highlighted for that. Say what you want to about Starfield. I think what they do about New Game Plus is about to be ripped off a whole lot over the next few years.
Yeah, you don't really see like them, I think like a lot of New Game Plus that you see is just like, all right, yeah, sometimes you'll have the same equipment that you had. Or
a new difficulty.
A new difficulty, like, yeah, nothing super amazing. Like, it's nice to have it, but every once in a while you're just like, I don't know if I want to play through the entire game again, like with the same. Sometimes you do, sometimes it depends on the game, obviously, but this definitely seems like a really innovative way to handle New Game Plus. And so, yeah, I think it's very well deserving of coolest feature here for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Our next category, please.
All right, this needs to stop. So we have big budget games with weak stories. Game announcements that are a little more than some CGI and maybe a year for when they come out. Poorly optimized PC ports. Single player taking the backseat to live service games. And then time travel and multiverse plots.
And our winner is, sadly, big budget games with weak stories. I don't know what it is. We were making so much progress. Naughty Dog was pushing things forward with Uncharted and The Last of Us. We've had some great stories over the past few years, but this year in particular, it just seemed to be that a lot of games just really didn't care about their story. And it's just a lot of just weird choices. And it was kind of sad. There were some amazing games this year, but their stories didn't necessarily live up to the gameplay. And
what game do you think stands out the most in that regard?
Starfield.
Starfield? Okay.
Yeah. Starfield's a big one.
A lot of people seem pretty underwhelmed about the Starfield story.
Which is funny because Starfield is nominated for best story. Because you can see that it was very difficult to find some stories to nominate this year. I had to fucking start scraping the shitty residue from the beef in the stew pot to try and form it into an award. I will say special shout out to game announcements that are just CGI and maybe a year if that. Fucking stop it.
Yeah,
you and I were not having a good time at that Xbox showcase earlier this year when it was just like, okay, cool. I guess that'll be out before I'm dead. Maybe. I don't know. When is it coming out? Mm-hmm. Oh, you showed me a giant man and a little girl. What do I do in the game? Why should I care?
Yeah. Yeah, I think another if a game like comes out like 2 years after it's being announced, I just am like, cool. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know that this exists. I think Nintendo has definitely gone a long way in terms of like, here's a game we're announcing. It's out in 3 months. Sick. Why can't we all do that? I mean, game development is different now. I understand that, but also I think having just announcing that a game exists and then having it come out in like a year to 2 years is just bonkers to me. There's so many games coming out. It's just not worth just being like, I'm going to check in, see how this game is doing every 4 or 5 months. Like,
Yeah.
no.
What was the, I could be wrong. I'm not trying to exaggerate this for comedic effect, but was it 7 years between the trailer for Cyberpunk and when it actually came out? Like it was a while. Like that's unnecessary. And I get that game kept getting delayed and there were a lot of problems, but it's like, come on.
For sure.
Like really? Like, come on.
Yeah. Don't announce a game is going to come out until it's had like an alpha build. I'd say that's kind of where I'm at of like, if you don't even have anything to show of the game, of like, if you don't have any gameplay to show of it, like, I don't want to see it. It's a game. Like, of course I want to see how it plays and how it looks in action. Just telling me it exists and then like telling me, yeah, we'll see you in a year and a half. Like, the internet is different now. And like the way we the way we find out about games is so much different now that we just can't keep doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one that always sticks out, even though it wasn't a game that I liked, was I think it was the Fallout 4 reveal. They revealed it at E3, which would have been June, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's out in September." You only have to wait a couple months.
Yeah,
like
Mortal Kombat does that, like with most of their games as well. Like those games get announced, and then they get revealed, and then the date is like right around the corner.
Yeah.
So this doesn't need to. Especially with something like Grand Theft Auto 6, where we've had like a 10-year wait, like for a trailer to tell us it's going to be out in 2 years. You're like, that's great, but
that
also,
one, I am okay with that one simply because they had to stop people leaking shit and they needed to get out in front of it.
Sure.
And also, it gets announced in December of 2023. If it comes out in March 2025, that's less than a year and a half.
That's true.
So that's actually not that bad. But I think that was more just like the circumstances they were under with like, can we really just keep letting people leak this stuff? Like we have to show people what this game actually is.
That's true. Yeah, I think that one big leak from earlier this year really forced them a lot of that stuff. So makes sense.
Yeah.
But
all right. Next category
is best performance. We have Andrew Bowen as Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat 1. We have Sissy Jones as Andreja from Starfield. We have Matthew Porretta versus Ilka Vili as Alan Wake from Alan Wake 2. We have Naji Jeter as Miles Morales in Spider-Man 2. We have Tina Ivlev as Marin from Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And we have Yuri Lowenthal as Peter Parker from Spider-Man 2.
This one was a difficult one, but our winner is Yuri Lowenthal as Peter Parker. This really came down to Yuri against Matthew Porretta and Ilka Vili. So Matthew Porretta is the voice of Alan Wake. Ilka Vili does all the motion capture and has the facial model for Alan Wake. Alan Wake 2, for those that don't know, almost all of the actors that you see in the game are foreign-born actors, with the exception of Saga Anderson. Saga, the woman that plays Saga Anderson, is from London. But she speaks English as her native language. The guy that plays Mr. Door speaks English as his native language, but pretty much everybody else is a Finnish actor. So they actually just dubbed everybody. So a lot of people are played by multiple actors because they did the whole dubbing thing. But Yuri Lowenthal, for a game that's about two Spider-Men, Miles Morales and Peter Parker, it was Peter's story this time around. It was really his story. It dealt with, people very close to him. There are times in that game, unfortunately, where Miles Morales does feel like he's a little bit pushed aside. But I think it was Peter's story and Peter's game largely. And Yuri Lowenthal is, he's arguably the best Spider-Man. I mean, I know obviously people were very partial to Tobey Maguire when those movies came out. They were the first big superhero movies. A lot of people really enjoy Tom Holland's work now. I actually was a very big Andrew Garfield fan for his Spider-Man, but I think Yuri Lowenthal he's just a really, really solid take on that character.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the better Spider-Mans that we've seen. I mean, they've all had their good qualities and their charms. I don't think anybody's actually especially blown it, but like, yeah, I think Yuri Lowenthal had a really good performance.
Yeah,
for sure.
And real quick before we go to the next category, special shout out to Cissy Jones and Andreja and Starfield. That is a game that has a cast of largely characters you never want to interact with. And she did a very good job. And she's also has one of my all-time favorite voiceover performances. She played Delilah in Firewatch and was just absolutely fantastic.
Nice.
So
that's awesome. All right,
next category.
Next category. All right, we have. I'm just kind of sad and empty now. Is that a statement or a category? Okay.
I thought it was better to say that than biggest disappointment, which is what I used last year for Saints Row. I also thought about just calling this the Saints Row Memorial Award, but then all those people lost their jobs, and I was like, that's not good. I probably shouldn't do that. So yeah, these games just kind of left me sad and empty.
Yeah, so they are as follows: AEW Fight Forever, Diablo 4, and Star Trek Resurgence.
And our winner is Diablo 4.
Wow.
I love the Diablo series. Very big fan. Been playing it since 2 came out on the PC. Diablo 4 is a live service hellscape. I want nothing to do with it. I thought the story was super bland. I thought the gameplay was bland. I thought the environments were bland. Everything all looked the same. I just did not have a fun time playing that game. I started off real hot with it, but man, once you get that through that first 3-5 hours, and you realize like this is what this game is. Oh, I willingly made a purchase at KFC to get into the beta of this game. I did not eat the KFC. I did not want to suffer from skin slippage, but I made a purchase to get the tiniest chicken sandwich they have to get into this game. It made me do dark things, Davis. But then the dark things won, and this game is just a massive. Yeah, this game is just a massive disappointment. AEW, honestly, because that was a huge disappointment. I just didn't have expectations for it. If I had expectations for that game, yeah, it probably would have won, but I just didn't have any because I didn't think it was going to be good to begin with, and they proved me right. Congratulations, AEW.
Yeah, I think there was you saw some of the pedigree behind AEW where you're just like, okay, this in theory has people behind it who care about wrestling games and have made good wrestling games. So I think from that perspective, you had some level of expectation, but then you kind of saw how they didn't really get out behind this game to market it super heavily. You didn't really know a lot of information about it up until like a few weeks before it was going to come out. So a lot of the writing was on the wall with that one. So I think AEW Fight Forever is just pretty disappointing. And I didn't even know about Star Trek Resurgence. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't tell you a thing about it.
It's an adventure game, like a more than a point and click, but not far off. You know, it's a standard adventure game. It's laid out like episodes of the show. Like each chapter or 2 chapters are kind of like an episode of the show. It starts off pretty good and then just falls off a fucking cliff like an hour into it. And what?
Is it a full price game?
No, it was 30 or 40.
Okay.
I was streaming it this year. Like every Saturday night I would play like another hour of it. And then it just got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Is that where it's kind of like a Telltale thing?
Yes.
Sort of?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought,
yeah.
Yeah. For everything I've heard about Diablo 4 tells me that the impression of it initially was pretty positive, but once you realized how much it was tied into live service game tropes, that people bounced off of it pretty fast.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because I think people think it had really this has been a pretty long wait since 3 and people really, really liked 3. And it feels like this game was in a lot of ways just a step backwards. And I think their attempts at trying to further monetize it, not to mention the fact that it was an always online game for reasons. I can see why people bounced off of it pretty hard. It doesn't seem like the updates they've been putting out for it have really brought people back in.
Yeah.
There's just other games to play now
Yeah.
that are, so that's disappointing for sure. Yeah. People really liked it, but then like people were just like, well, Baldur's Gate 3 is coming out. Who cares?
Yeah, I just blew it right out of the water.
Yeah. So, yeah. Next up, we have everything kind of sucked working in the games industry this year, but a couple good things happened. So we have Bobby Kotick out at Activision Blizzard and Cyberpunk's redemption.
Yes, it was very difficult to find positive things that happened in the games industry this year because there wasn't many. Great games were made, but not a great industry to be a part of as an employee this year. But I decided to go with Cyberpunk's redemption because that's a feel-good story. Obviously, a lot of people feel very good about Bobby Kotick being gone, but I don't want to talk about Bobby Kotick. He's an asshole in the worst part of Moneyball. So Cyberpunk's redemption, I mean, I really can't believe that they did it. I can't believe that they turned that game around. It's just an unbelievable miracle in the games industry that they were able to do it. That game is, I mean, I enjoyed it when it came out, but I'm nuts. And I suffered through it pre-patches. And to play like this much more fleshed out version of it now as I'm working my way through the expansion that came out for it is just like, man, this is great. I like all this. And
I think the foundation was always there for Cyberpunk for sure. I think, you look at how much that game had stacked against it, like initially, like the launch was obviously like, that game got worked on right up through the pandemic, and they really had to, get it out the door. So it came in extremely hot, and like people were, very unhappy with it, justifiably so. But like, I think the game underneath all of its bugs and issues was still very sound and still had a lot of really good ideas. But yeah, it's been a long time coming for them to get up to now with this new update and with all the, all the changes they made and all the fixes they've done to it. But yeah, I think it's good to see that they, they didn't just like cut their losses and be like, well, it sold well, who cares?
Yeah. And
they decided to actually flesh it out and like release the product that they wanted to make initially. And I think that's great. Because I'm sure nobody at that company was happy with how that game shipped, and they just wanted to make good on it, and they did. And that's great. That's, not since like No Man's Sky have you seen them really try to, turn it around. And and that game, I mean, it's become kind of a juggernaut of content now. We got an anime, we got, just people are just really into Cyberpunk, and that's great. I like it a lot. So yeah.
Next up, we have most anticipated game of 2024. We have Black Myth Wukong, Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and Star Wars Outlaws. This was a tough one to pick, not because it's a dead heat between these games or anything, but it's because not a lot of games have been announced for 2024. A lot of games have been announced. A lot of games were announced this past week, but not a lot of them have years or dates attached to them. So maybe they come out in 2024. So I could only pick from games that actually had a definitive 2024 date announced. And I decided to go with Star Wars Outlaws. Because I'm a big Star Wars fan. I like the Jedi games that came out. I want to see what Ubisoft can do. I hope that they get away from that Ubisoft formula, which it seems like they are comfortable with doing. Because that Avatar game that just came out, which is essentially just Far Cry with an Avatar skin, gets away from a lot of the things that people don't like about Ubisoft open world games with just vomit icons all over a map and all that stuff. So I'm very curious, very excited to see what they could do with Star Wars Outlaws. And I am also very looking, because it's the first big game of the year next year. I'm also very much looking forward to Prince of Persia. That looks really solid.
Yeah, I am also quite excited about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I think that game looks gorgeous. I love the look of it. I think that going back to a 2D Prince of Persia is going to be awesome. But yeah, no, that Star Wars Outlaws, I remember the initial gameplay trailer we got for it, I think looked really promising. I really liked the little dog boy thing that you had, that like your little partner. It's very cute. But yeah, we've had a pretty good run of Star Wars games over the past few years. I know Jedi Survivor's launch was a little rough, but I think all those, I mean, this shows there's still a lot of life left in Star Wars. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go with the movies. The shows seem like they've been doing well. So yeah, I think it's nice to have more Star Wars things that deviate from like established things in the movies, and seeing like more characters and different parts of the timeline. I think it's been really cool. So I think there's a lot of potential for Star Wars Outlaws, and I'm very curious to see what they do with it. Does that have like a date, or just has
says 2024? Yeah.
Okay, so who knows? That could be.
I think the only it's the only one on that list that doesn't have a definitive date, because they just announced the Black Myth Wukong date like 2 days ago.
That's right.
But Infinite Wealth is what, February? Lost Crown's January. Black Myth is August. I assume Star Wars Outlaws is probably a holiday, next year kind of thing.
Do we have another Star Wars movie lined up for next year? No, we don't.
No.
Okay. Or a show. I wonder if they're trying to like coincide the release with the show.
I don't know if Andor season 2 is supposed to be next year and is delayed because of the strike, but as far as I know, outside of maybe like an animated thing, I don't think they have like a live action one lined up for next year off the top of my head.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Next category.
Next category is the game I wish I had more time with / was better at. So we have Baldur's Gate 3, Dead Island 2, RoboCop Rogue City, and Sea of Stars.
And the winner, if you've been following along on the podcast, is Baldur's Gate 3. I just feel like I'm left out of a big loop because I just didn't have time to really dive into it. Not because I didn't want to play it, but it's such a long game, 100 hours at minimum, probably. And it's just difficult to devote that kind of time when I'm trying to play every new release for the channel and talk about different things every week on the show. It was just eventually something had to get cut. And the thing that got cut was the thing that was kind of the biggest time commitment. My goal over the next week or two, now that I am done with all of this and I can get back to just playing games for the sake of playing games, I can start spending more time with it and get into it. And Dead Island 2, I put this on here. This was better at. I just eventually hit a roadblock where the game was too hard. I really enjoyed what I was playing, but I kept dying and dying and dying, and it just wasn't fun anymore. So it was just a little bit too hard.
That's fair. I wanted to check out Dead Island 2 just because I remember thinking pretty fondly of the first one. And I think there were other games I was buying at the time, so I just never got around to it. But that's definitely on my list if I can catch it in a sale or something. But that game seemed fun. Of the games on this list that I enjoyed the most was definitely RoboCop Rogue City. Like, I played a good chunk of that game and just really, really, it's very incredibly faithful to RoboCop in a way that I was like, this is like the best, like, this is what RoboCop 3 should have been. In a lot of ways. Like, it is a fantastic game. And I also wish I had more time to spend with it too, but that also came out pretty late in this year. But I like that game a lot. And Sea of Stars is a game I have not looked at yet, but I know that I really, really liked The Messenger. So I think I definitely want to give it a shot just because I liked that previous work so much. And I never played a ton of Chrono Trigger either, but I know that this game is pretty subversive in a lot of ways with how it does storytelling and how it does, like, all its gameplay. So I definitely got to check that. That's another game I really should sit down and play.
Yeah, it's just a really well-made kind of traditional 90s RPG. Like, it's really high quality.
Yeah, so that's definitely up there on my list for sure. I want to check that out. Okay, so next up we have Best Story, which is, we got Alan Wake 2, got Frasier Fantasy, Hogwarts Legacy, Spider-Man 2, and the second half of Starfield's main quest, and like 4 side quests.
Yes, I thought you would appreciate that, because that's how I genuinely feel about the story of Starfield.
That's fair. I'm sure. Yeah, that's a pretty common sentiment, I would say.
Like the side quest where you're doing jobs for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and like Genghis Khan shows up is pretty good. And like that quest is like still bugged, I think, to this day. And I had to repeat that quest like 10 times to try and like finally get the save file to accept that it was working. Starfield didn't win. But I decided to go. This was really difficult. This honestly, I kind of wanted to give it to Frasier Fantasy because
I don't blame you. Yeah,
it's just an episode of Frasier. You know,
exactly.
it's
Well,
great.
yeah, what more could you ask for?
But I went with Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2 is, I'm not a huge superhero fan, but I like Spider-Man. I've always enjoyed the comics, the cartoons, and the movies. And Spider-Man 2, I was very nervous about because they said they were going to do Kraven, and Kraven is my all-time favorite Spider-Man villain, and he has typically not done well in media. He has kind of been relegated to like a C tier villain or like a D tier villain. And then what's worse is they're doing that Kraven live action movie that looks absolutely horrible. I mean, it looks like a joke. And so I was very concerned about how they were going to do this. And they ended up doing what I think might be the best depiction of the character ever. And it was a great story, balancing between having two playable characters that had their kind of own unique take on things. And they fleshed out some of the side characters. Some of them maybe took a little bit of a step back. I think a lot of the Miles side stuff kind of took a step back. But I think a lot of I'm having a hard time finding the word. Cliffhangers at the end of the game, pretty much set up. I think it sets up, I assume they're going to do another Miles Morales, like a side game that's, $40 or whatever. That's 8 hours long instead of 18 hours long. And I think they set that up pretty well. And I think they set up the inevitable Spider-Man 3. At the end of the game, Peter Parker retires as Spider-Man and Miles Morales takes over as the only Spider-Man. But you absolutely know that at some point, either at the end of that Miles Morales secondary game or at the beginning of Spider-Man 3, something's going to happen and they pull me back in and Peter Parker has to put that suit back on. And you just know that, he's coming back. Of course, it's going to be, they're not going to just get rid of Peter Parker. But I really enjoyed the game. I had a smile on my face from start to finish. It was just a really pleasant experience, a really well-made game. And I think it is an absolute travesty that there is this growing conversation online that Insomniac is not a AAA developer and among the best of the best because there's not many companies that can touch them these days. So I just think that it's the most ridiculous sentiment out there. It's like one of the worst takes in video games this year by far.
I feel like more of the discussion I've seen is like what constitutes as indie than I have about like, this is not a AAA development. I mean, I'm struggling to understand who would just accuse Insomniac of not being a AAA developer.
It was like a big thing that came out where they were like, yeah, I mean, you have Rockstar and Bethesda and Naughty Dog and then Insomniac's just like below them. And I was just like, no. Like, if anything, Bethesda has been falling down a hill for the past decade since Skyrim came out. Like, they've put out 3 straight disappointing games with Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and now Starfield. Like, no, I don't think they're at the level. I mean, to me, Rockstar is in a league of their own. Nobody does it like Rockstar does. They are the best of the best of the best of the best, sir. They are the fucking recruits from Men in Black. They are at the top. And then, I think, honestly, after Alan Wake 2 and Control, I think Remedy's up there.
Okay.
I think Insomniac between Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man and, the 3 Spider-Man games that they've done are up there. Like Nintendo's first party is up there, between, whatever Mario games coming out and Zelda and all that stuff. Like, to say that Insomniac doesn't belong is just like, what planet are you? Do you not like video games? Like... Yes. I'm sorry that they don't make these super depressing games. Ratchet and Clank is bright and colorful and fun, and Spider-Man is bright and colorful and fun. That's video games should be fun.
Right. I think the problem people have is that they're not trying to make games that look or feel like movies. They're just trying to make good games. Like, yeah, it's Spider-Man, so of course it's going to look and feel like a movie in a lot of ways. It's Spider-Man.
It's better than any Marvel movie that's been out since they ended the whole Iron Man, Captain America saga thing.
Yeah, I think the more you try, like, that's what people like try to conflate, like, the idea of being AAA with, is that AAA developers are only trying to make, like, movie blockbuster type games, and that's just not, it's just not the way that it is. Like... So I think that is an incredibly short-sighted thing to say about Insomniac, and it just feels dumb. Like,
Yeah.
there's no other way to.
Yeah, I remember when the topic got brought up on the Kind of Funny podcast, and they said the idea, and then the look on everybody's face at that table was like, are we seriously talking about this? Like, this is a thing that we have to mention? Like, they're one of the best developers in the world. Like,
yeah,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, like how many misses has Insomniac Games had? I can't think of any. Like, yeah, you could say like some of the Ratchet and Clank games were a little undercooked, but even then, like,
and those were 15 years ago,
right? Yeah,
like
they've had nothing but hit. Like, yeah, I mean, I would like a new Resistance, but we're never going to get one. But like,
yeah,
yeah, like their output has been so consistently high quality to even like question their place in the industry as a AAA developer is just. I cannot get behind it in any. I can't even just try to like adjust my my brain to get into that mindset of like, how could they just not? Because then you have the whole conversation of like what constitutes AAA, like what makes AAA versus what what makes AA or indie or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just make good games. Like it's kind of where I'm at, but like so I don't know what to make of that argument. I don't even want to engage with it because it's so stupid.
Yeah.
But okay, all right. Easy on the eyes is our next category, and we have Alan Wake 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Jacint. Oh, sorry, it's French. Jacint. Mortal Kombat 1, Sea of Stars, Spider-Man 2, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
So before I give the winner, I want to talk about what this category actually is. It's not just best technical graphics, not what looks the best cranked on a 4090 with ray tracing on. It is the style of the game. It is the feel of the game. It's clothing choices for the characters. It is environmental design. It is all of that stuff blended together. And because of that, there was a runaway winner with this year, and that was Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2's visual design is on a level I have never seen before in a game. Their mix of in-game rendered CGI that is in real time, not just in-game cutscenes, but in real time where you have control over the character, overlaid with FMV footage of the actors, blending seamlessly into that game, is unbelievable. It is an incredible effect. It stops you dead in your tracks when you start to see it. It is an unbelievable game on all. From a technical standpoint, it's one of the best looking games ever made. If you have a computer that can run it, I assume you would have to work at NASA, because it has brought my computer to its absolute knees.
Yeah, I remember you told me that it was a struggle to run it.
Yeah, it is unbelievable what they have done. This is the pinnacle of everything they have been trying to do, from the fake TV commercials, which I think at one point, like in the Max Payne games, were just still images that kind of rotated, to now they're full blown high production with real actors television commercials that exist in the game. And those are throwaway things you could potentially miss. You might not go into the break room at the detective station and see that TV turn on with that commercial, but they still took the time and effort to make it's the amount of care that they put into the game. It's the amount of details that they do. It's the little things. You always want to talk about what sets people apart, whether they're a professional athlete, a professional musician, an actor, whatever it is. What makes Leonardo DiCaprio better than this actor? It's the little details. It's when you're getting into those granular things that only the best of the best care about. That's what separates you. And that's what Alan Wake 2 did this year.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think everything I've seen with Alan Wake has been like pretty incredible. I mean, I have not played it just because I didn't feel comfortable with my PC running it, and I'll probably eventually get it on PS5. I wanted to honestly hold out for a disc, but yeah, everything I've seen of that game in action, I'm just kind of like blown away by how fully realized and how much time and care they put into just like details that if you're not like actively looking for them, you could just easily miss, like you said. And that's, yeah, that really, that goes, little things like that go such a long way to making an experience more immersive and more fleshed out and making the world feel truly lived in. And I think it does an absolutely impeccable job of that. So I think it is well deserving of this, just from a technical and artistic standpoint. Like, nothing looks like Alan Wake 2, and I think it's so absolutely deserves that.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next category, I do want to talk about Mortal Kombat 1. I think NetherRealm probably has, or NetherRealm, sorry, probably has the best facial tech in the business. If they could get the facial tech guy over to Remedy for Alan Wake, because Alan Wake really does struggle with faces. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact, like we mentioned before, they are using different actors and voice actors. Everything has to be dubbed. It's all being done kind of like an ADR and looping after the fact. So the lip syncing is a big issue in the game. And I think if you could find a way to blend that and get that facial tech from Mortal Kombat 1, my God, you would have a good looking game on your hands. Like you would not have any criticisms at that point.
No, I would absolutely agree. Like, I think Mortal Kombat, like the Mortal Kombat tech has always been incredibly impressive, to an alarming degree. Like the way that they're not just the way that they're able to like capture faces, but the way they're able to capture human anatomy is disturbing in all the ways you would want for a Mortal Kombat game. But it's incredibly impressive. So yeah, I would think that if they ever got a hold of that technology, like it would get. I mean, we can only go so close to like the real thing before it starts to get a little too real.
I mean, there are moments in Alan Wake 2 that you genuinely do not know if you're looking at FMV or CGI. You just don't know.
For sure.
And there's even a scene where they show the camera going around the table with the characters, and it's all the real actors. And when it loops back around, you're back into the computer graphics, and then it just seamlessly goes into you controlling the characters. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, loading times don't exist in this world anymore. Like,
it's truly, come a long way. All right, so we got best moment now. So we have bringing Howard's pigeons home from Spider-Man 2. We have broken universes from Starfield. Coney Island from Spider-Man 2. Exploring Hogwarts for the first time in Hogwarts Legacy. Rick the Door Technician from Starfield. I'm sorry, not from Starfield, from Jedi Survivor. The final Gauntlet mashup characters in Mortal Kombat 1. The Life You Leave Behind in Starfield. We Sing from Alan Wake 2. And when Peter gets the symbiote suit for the first time in Spider-Man 2.
So I'm going to break all these down, because to me, this was the toughest category. That's why it had the most nominations. Sure. Because all of these are moments I am going to remember for a long time. And a couple of these are going to be moments I remember in video games until I die. There are a couple of these that are just some of the best moments I've ever experienced in a video game ever. All right, bringing Howard's pigeons home. Howard is a side character from the first Spider-Man game. You do the Spider-Man games, if you haven't played them, there's just a lot of stuff to collect. There's always things to collect. And the first game was backpacks and chasing down pigeons. In the second game, it's little spider robots. So you chase down all these pigeons in the first game, and you meet Howard, and it's his pigeons that got out from their coop and all this stuff. Well, in the second game, you see Howard, and he's sitting very kind of lonesome and looks, just sad, sitting by the water, and he talks to Spider-Man about his life. He points to various objects in the skyline of New York City and says, this is where I used to work, and I got laid off from there, and that's why I'm homeless now. This is where I met my wife, and he talks about when his wife passes away, and he's lost everything in his life. The only thing he has left are his pigeons, and he tells Spider-Man that his pigeons need a new home. He can no longer take care of them. So Spider-Man decides to bring the pigeons to Queens, where they have some more trees rather than just the city for them to stay. And at the end of delivering the pigeons, you decide to go back to Howard to let him know that you have brought them home safe. When you arrive, there's an ambulance on the scene and Howard has passed away. And it is a very powerful moment, especially if you played that first game. And it really puts the frailty of life, in hand, because I know personally, if I knew I was about to die, I would probably call you up and say, hey, you got to take care of my dog, man. Like the fact that you're putting that above all else, that only relationship you have left, which isn't even with a human being, above all else. Like I have to get this done before I'm done on this earth. I think was just a really poignant moment in that game. Broken universes from Starfield. When you start playing the New Game Plus in Starfield, like I said before, you'll have some new dialogue options, but you keep playing New Game Plus and things are going to start to go a little weird. You may start the game up and all of the characters are you. You may start the game up and there's an evil version of you. You may start the game up and all the characters are potted plants or children. And you don't know what's going to happen.
Interesting.
And it's just a very interesting twist, continuing on the already very inventive twist on New Game Plus.
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen. That's cool.
Yep. A lot of people had no idea because it takes like the third or fourth New Game Plus for it to start triggering, and it's all random as well. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Coney Island from Spider-Man 2, in a game that is very serious, has some very sad moments, has a lot of personal moments. Coney Island is that break from it all. You get the three kind of, not the main characters because Miles Morales isn't part of it, but you get Peter, Mary Jane, and Harry, and they just go to Coney Island and play games of chance. They hit the bell and make it go up, and they do the water gun and the squirt mouth and all that stuff, and they go on a roller coaster and a Ferris wheel, and it's just this like, man, our lives have gotten so complicated with me being a superhero and Mary Jane being out of a job and Harry being sick and his mother passing away. And we just have this moment of normalcy before the plot. Like, it's around the time the plot really kicks off in that game. And it's just the calm before the storm. And I really, really enjoyed it. Cool. Exploring Hogwarts for the first time. If you were a Harry Potter fan growing up, you know, you always wanted to visit Hogwarts. You know, they kind of brought it to life with the, was it Universal Studios? I think in LA and Florida might both have it, where you can kind of go and see it. But seeing it in a virtual setting where you can go anywhere in all these classrooms and interact with all these characters. And yes, they're not the characters from the book or the show or the movies because it, you know, it takes place before all that. But it's just seeing it realized and seeing it in a way that you can experience it and soak it all in is just, it's pretty cool if you're a fan of the series. Sure. Rick the Door Technician is probably the funniest moment in all of games this year. So the way Jedi Survivor works, I assume it's probably pretty close. You could tell me to like Elden Ring or the Dark Souls games when you meet a boss, you know, you see their name appear and then their life bar, you know, fills out. And that's the way it is every time you meet a boss in Jedi Survivor, where you're running down this hallway and you've destroyed everybody. You've murdered 50 dozen stormtroopers and you see this guy meet you and he pulls out his gun and he's like, you're not getting past me. And it says Rick the Door Technician and the life bar pulls up and you run up and hit him with one hit and he dies. And it's the quickest boss battle in the entire game. And it's so good. It's just awesome. Like this moment of levity because it's like, it's near the climax of the game where everything is kind of like, you know, all falling apart for the characters and all this stuff. And I just thought it was really, really cool.
It's really bold of you to like decide to be like, you're not getting past me, knowing that you're a Jedi. Like,
yeah, like, he is so like he has seen you kill everything, and he's just like, no, fucker, like you're not getting past Rick the Door Technician.
Yeah, good for Rick, man. Rest in peace, Rick.
I had to pause the game. I was laughing so hard. Like I was like, oh, what is this? Like, is it like a super stormtrooper of some sort? Is he like the one guy that actually has accuracy? Like, is he going to kill me? And it's just like, oh, okay, I guess not.
Good. That's really funny.
The final gauntlet mashup characters in Mortal Kombat 1. At the very end of the game, you have to go through this big gauntlet thing where you're facing all these characters leading up to the final boss. Mm-hmm. All the characters you face are randomly generated mixes of multiple characters. So it might be a female scorpion or a scorpion that has Baraka's spears coming out, or Sonya Blade has Kano's eye and all this stuff. And it's just like, they're just all, and they're random. So like the ones I got wouldn't necessarily be the ones that you would get. Like there's just, I think there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them in the game.
Really cool idea.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, they're very quick battles. They don't have like full health and it's only like one round. So you mow through them like pretty quick. It's only like 15 minutes of gameplay, but it kind of like stood out. Hmm? The life you leave behind in Starfield, it is at the very end when you get the choice to do New Game Plus. You know, they tell you basically, like I said, in binary terms, you know, do you want to just keep going with the save file and finish up what you want to do, or do you want to enter the New Game Plus portion? And they present it to you in this way. You are floating in space and you see all the choices you have made in the game come to life. So basically telling you, like, if you decide to do this New Game Plus, if you decide it's becoming Starborn, if you decide to become Starborn, here's what's going to happen to all these people that you know. And the fact that you're not in their lives anymore, the character that you married will no longer be married. You won't, when you enter this new universe, they will have no idea who you are. You will not have that connection with them anymore. Everybody gets their slate wiped clean, and you get to physically move in the space and move up to each aspect of the choices you made throughout the game. And like some dialogue plays and there's a voiceover and the whole thing. And it's just very well done. It's it's very similar to like the ending of Mass Effect 3 where you make your final decision, but it's just like, instead of just being text on a screen, you get to physically move around and see these choices in front of you, like actually be presented as a reminder of this is what you are losing if you choose to enter this next stage of this game. And I thought it was just really well done.
That is cool. Sounds well done. Yeah. Like for an ending to one of the, I mean, it's got to be such a difficult thing to choose an ending for that game, considering how massive it is and like how much leading up to it. But that's cool. That sounds like a good way to do it for sure.
Yeah. We Sing from Alan Wake 2. This probably has been known by multiple names after the performance at the Game Awards. Most people are probably just going to call this the Herald of Darkness. That's the song that plays. But Alan Wake 2 is it's a horror game. It's very, honestly, I was scared multiple times by a lot of jump scares, a lot of very brutal stuff in that game, until a few hours in where the game turns into a full Broadway musical. It has full FMV filmed. They got all the actors to film this huge musical with productions. They have a full band that's playing. There's fireworks going off. It's like 16 minutes long. It's absolutely incredible. And they recreated the whole thing with all of the actors in the band at the Game Awards a couple nights ago.
That is insane.
And it is unbelievable. And it's just seeing all these characters do a full dance routine and a dance number. And the way it's presented in the game, like you're seeing it, it's like these floating screens and you're physically moving between them. And there'll be times where they like stop dancing and start pointing because that's like the direction they want you to go. And you're going through. And then like, as you get further into the musical, like these elements from the game start appearing. Like one of the first things you have to do as Alan Wake is steal the light from the headlights of a taxi cab so you can transfer it to a different lamp. And that taxi cab shows up and like a ringing payphone from New York City shows up and like the pages of the novel you're writing on start appearing on the floor and all this crazy shit. And it is unbelievable.
Sounds awesome.
And then the last one, when Peter gets the symbiote suit for the first time in Spider-Man 2, it's just that feeling of actually being a superhero, being actually overpowered in a game. So many superhero games don't want you to be overpowered because it's not a great video game mechanic, but superheroes in reality would be. They would destroy everything. They always come out on top. And this is a moment where you really feel like that when the controller starts making these like dog growling noises coming out of the speaker and you're now one-shotting every enemy and you have this whole new list of abilities that you didn't have before and your controls are mapped totally differently and you're just wrecking shop on enemy after enemy after enemy. And it's just like, holy shit, the power of this symbiote suit in the game that becomes such a crucial part of the plot is just like, geez, it really takes you back. And it doesn't really lose its luster the more you do it in the game. Because eventually it just becomes an ability you can trigger by clicking in the two sticks. But it really still feels important every time you trigger it throughout the game. So with all that being said, the best moment ultimately goes to, it is the greatest moment this year by far, one of the best experiences I have had playing a game in I don't know how many years. It's the musical from Alan Wake 2. It is such a bizarre fucking thing. And it's so well done. And that song is so catchy and you just cannot get it out of your head. And it's just unbelievable. It's so good.
That's awesome. I really should just like, I'm the more I hear about Alan Wake 2, the more I'm just like, oh, who cares if I can't get a disc? I gotta just buy this. This seems amazing. I'm sure it runs fine on a PS5. So yeah. That sounds awesome. Even just I didn't watch all the Game Awards, but like so I missed that whole section.
Yeah, it was towards the end. It was in the back.
I wouldn't have had that. That context for it. But yeah, that's just this game sounds amazing. So I will probably check it out.
Yeah, I actually, when the Game Awards happened on Thursday, I had not gotten to that point in the game. I really spent the past couple of nights powering through as much of that game as I could. So I actually had not gotten to it yet. I knew there was a musical in the game because just so many people were talking about it. And I saw it and I was like, oh, I bet you in the game it's just the fake band. Like you just see them because there's like this fake talk show that happens. And it's like, well, every talk show always has a band play at the end of the show. And that's what I figured it was. I did not realize that they were just reenacting what happens. And when I finally got into the game, I was like, what the fuck is happening in this horror game?
Yeah, that sounds, I do want to play this really bad because this seems awesome. So I would not expect them to go all out for the Game Awards just to recreate it.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. So,
All right. Well, that only leaves us with one last thing to do. We will be back in just a moment with our top 10 lists. All right, everybody, we're down to it. Our final portion of the Perfect Reload Year-End Awards 2023, our top 10 games of the year. Davis is going to be giving his personal list, and I'll be giving my list, which is the official Perfect Reload list. Davis, why don't you kick things off?
Okay. All right. So my number 10 on this list is Super Mario Brothers Wonder. This is the next mainline Mario game that we've been given after Odyssey. Unlike Odyssey, it is now back to being a 2D platformer. And I just thought this was just a really incredibly well-made platformer. I thought a lot of the visual ideas they had in terms of how they laid out stages, how they laid out the secret aspects of the stages, all the power-ups you had at your disposal. I just think that at every single step of the way, like how inventive and creative they got with the setting of this game, with the mechanics of this game. Every time I thought I had seen something that I'd never, that I just had never seen before, and like they couldn't possibly top this, they found a way to keep doing it. And I was really, not only is it, I mean, it's one thing for it to just be like a consistently tight platformer, as these games often are, like by default, but like just the fact that they kept finding new ways to innovate and, be experimental with like the Mario formula, I thought was just really fascinating and a lot of fun. And I couldn't put this game down for a good month. Like it was just it's probably the best Mario game I've played since 64. Like, and I loved the shit out of 64. I played a lot of 64 this year even. So yeah, that's definitely, I mean, it seems low on this list, but there's a lot of games on this list that I played a lot of and really enjoyed, but I just had to give that game a shout out because it was probably, just an incredibly well-made game just across the board. Like the people who made this game were just like at the top of their game. And just when you think like Mario has run out of ideas or has gotten boring, like they find new ways to make it fresh again. And that's awesome.
Yeah, I would like to spend a little bit more time with it, but I did really enjoy what I did play of it. Mm-hmm. All right, my number 10 is Viewfinder. I am not good at puzzle games, so I tend to not play them. I get easily frustrated, but Viewfinder just had something about it. I think it's that camera mechanic, like I said before previously, best puzzle game mechanic since the Portal Gun. Super inventive, super creative way to solve puzzles in that game. You really do feel like you accomplish something every time you complete one of them. The story is really thin, not a lot to it. But it's enough, of a story to kind of be okay. But the star of the show is the actual puzzle solving mechanics. And I just wish I would have gotten a bigger audience. I think maybe 10 years ago, it would have been as big as Portal. I just don't know. In a year that was so loaded this year, I think it was just tough for it to stand out. But man, it was really, really solid.
Yeah, it's definitely a recurring theme of this year is that a lot of really good games, for all the good stuff that came out, they definitely took attention away from some of the other really good stuff that just didn't get the audience that it deserved. Speaking of that, one of the games that I feel like didn't get as much of an audience that it deserved is my number 9 pick, and that is Bramble the Mountain King. This is a adventure game / horror game that is based around Nordic mythology. So what happens is you start the game as a little boy named Ollie, and you're playing with your sister, and suddenly you come across like this giant tree that once you go like venture into the tree, you magically become like far smaller. And so then you end up like losing track of where your sister is. So you're going to go on this long quest to reunite with your sister. But meanwhile, the entire world around you is giant. Like you're literally the size of like an army guy just navigating this world. And throughout this whole experience, you're dealing with like some of the most grotesque like monsters that are pulled straight from Nordic mythology. And I found it to be a really it's not a super long game. You can probably finish the game in like, 5 or 6 hours, but I found the art direction and the design of the environments to just be really, really chilling and really just disturbing in all the ways you'd want. Like I would harken a lot of like the gameplay to something like Limbo or Inside, that sort of gameplay. But it's fully 3D. And just like, yeah, a really, really well designed game that I don't feel like got a ton of attention this year.
I had never heard of it until I saw it on your when you sent your list over. I was not familiar with it. What did you play it on?
I played it on PS5.
PS5, okay.
Yep. And I just thought it was a really good example of like a game that it's not really designed to be a horror game per se, but I think this is scarier than some of the games I've played that have tried to be horror games, because there's no real combat. There's no real, like, I mean, there's some platforming, but you're basically just trying to go out of your way because you have no means to defend yourself against anything in this game. And just, a lot of the imagery in the game is just so unsettling and grotesque in ways that I'm just like, there are monsters from this game that'll stay with me forever. Like, I was really impressed by how well it manages to capture that sense of just like, it's not a survival horror game, but it feels like you're just constantly like an inch away of death, like at all times. And like, there's just monsters and things trying to kill you just everywhere. And it is very stressful. But I liked it a lot. And I think it definitely deserves more attention than it got.
Yeah. All right. Next on my list, number 9. Covered a lot of city builders on the channel this year. I'm a big fan of the genre, but this was a city builder in reverse, and that is Terra Nil. Eventually a game that got a little bit too hard for me. I was having some difficulty with the puzzles, which I felt bad about myself because every podcast I listened to that covered this game was like, man, these puzzles are just not that challenging in this game. And I was like, man, I am having a really difficult time over here. But it's a beautiful looking game. It's really cool doing everything in reverse, tearing the city down and then planting new life, getting animals to come in, rivers to flow, unpolluting things. Just the mechanics that you have to go through and the different, they're always throwing new things at you. Like now all of a sudden everything's covered in ice and you haven't dealt with ice before. Everything is underwater and it's been flooded and you have to deal with that. So it stayed fresh throughout. And I just really, really enjoyed it. It was a very, very pleasing game to play. Stressful for me because I was having a hard time with puzzles, but I imagine if you're maybe a little bit more adept at puzzle games, it would be much more of a chill experience for most people. Not much to it in terms of like sound design. So I could definitely see just like turning it on mute to turn off the little sound effects, putting, an album on and just kind of zoning out with it.
That sounds right up my alley. Like, I think it's really clever, their idea of trying to make like a reverse city builder sort of, puzzle game. I think that's really interesting. And because 2 of the games on my list are in fact puzzle games. So I'm always looking for like the next puzzle game. I've been a big Portal fan. So, but yeah, that sounds great. And what did you play it on?
PC.
Okay.
Yep.
And it is available most other places? Or
it's on mobile. Okay. I don't know if it's on anything else.
Okay.
It might be a little, I guess you could play with a controller. I mean, at least on mobile, you could tap, for stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it came out on anything else. I'll look that up real quick.
Give a shot on an iPad. Probably an iPad would be a fun way to play that game, I'm sure.
Yeah, Android, iOS, Mac OS, Linux, Windows, and Mac. Yeah, so it didn't come out on consoles.
Okay, cool. That sounds good.
Oh, it is available on Netflix if you have Netflix.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But that sounds cool. All right, so my number 8 is a game called Gravity Circuit. This is a game that we actually talked about on one of the episodes of Perfect Reload Weekly, and this is a Mega Man X-like that I found to be just like incredibly challenging, but also like just a lot of fun to play. I think it does a lot of, and I think the mechanics that it gave to you in terms of like making a Mega Man game that is just solely focused on melee combat, I thought was really interesting. I think that it's got a really nice like art style. I think this is, so many games are kind of like trying to ape that, this looks like it could be played on a SNES, but I think this is a really like top tier example of that. I thought the soundtrack was fantastic. I thought this was a really good one of those. There's a lot of those, like, oh, this is a Mega Man X like. There's plenty of those games that come out, but so I can see why this game kind of did fail to get like the amount of attention that it deserved as like being a good one of those. I even saw people posting on the Mega Man like subreddit about this game and that they were really enjoying it. So that kind of shows that it still was able to get into that demographic. So
I think this game, it suffered from just a total lack of promotion.
Yeah,
I just didn't see it anywhere. I didn't see anybody talking about it. And I think that sucks because I enjoyed playing it. I actually liked it. The other game that came out this year that's similar-ish was 30XX, where it does that kind of Mega Man thing, but it does it as a roguelike. And I thought Battle Circuit was better. I thought it was just overall a better game. And I think maybe 30XX got a little bit more attention because it was a sequel to a game and all that kind of stuff. But I thought Battle Circuit was really solid. If you like that Super Nintendo, that 90s era of Mega Man.
Yeah. So I think definitely worth a look. I think it's like $20. So, but yeah, definitely check it out if you can. Yeah, it's pretty much out on everything as far as I can tell.
I believe so. Yeah.
But,
all right, my number 8, Mortal Kombat 1. This was a great year for fighting games. We almost hit the trifecta if Tekken hadn't slipped until next year, where we got a new Mortal Kombat, new Street Fighter, and a new Tekken, and all of them being excellent. Tekken 8 looks like it's shaping up to be very good, and Street Fighter 6 was a fantastic fighting game this year. But I went with Mortal Kombat 1 here. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was fun. Mortal Kombat has unfortunately gotten to the point with how juggle heavy it is with its combos. It is essentially eclipsed my skill level where I just don't want to go online with it because I just can't hold my own. I can't compete in any way anymore. So it's one of those things where I'm pretty much just interacting with it as a single player experience these days, but a fun experience it is because it has such a great single player mode to it. There's, this big story with beautifully rendered CG cutscenes and it blends seamlessly into the gameplay. And it's just a lot of fun. It's just a fun game. I wasn't thrilled with the side modes, the removal of the crypt and the conquest stuff just wasn't for me. So it was hard to rank this any higher because I really only did really enjoy that story mode. And that was the reason why you want to use this as a spoiler for the rest of my list, but that was the reason why Call of Duty's not on my list this year, because can I really give it one of the best games of the year if Call of Duty has a single player campaign, Warzone, zombies, and traditional multiplayer? I'm only playing one of those. If I only like 25% of the game, can I really say it was one of my favorite games of the year?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a difficult decision to make, but I think that's kind of ultimately what I went with. And that's why Mortal Kombat ranks towards the bottom of this list, because, for that though, it's, I only liked half the game. That's a little bit more digestible, and it's the major portion of you're still actively, fighting against you're doing the traditional gameplay. So I kind of, I don't know, talked myself into a loophole, I guess, with it, but very enjoyable game.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, I definitely want to play Mortal Kombat 1, even despite the fact that I know that I will also I don't really have necessarily the skills to be competitive with it at all, but I still think I've enjoyed Mortal Kombat games throughout the years, so I think this would be another, I would enjoy this one just as much for similar reasons. So I do want to play it. I have to get another $70 set aside for it, but I will definitely play it for sure.
I would wait till it's on sale, especially if you only find yourself playing that story mode, because it is only about 6 hours long. So really gauge how much you want to spend on 6 hours.
Yeah, fair. All right, my number 6 game is a game called Cry Machina. This is an action JRPG from a developer called 30U. I'm not super familiar with the rest of their output, but this is a game. This is like an action RPG that plays pretty similar to like something like Devil May Cry or like even Dynasty Warriors. There's a lot of similarities there. But what sets this game apart is there's a pretty significant amount of visual novel elements as well that are in the game. Like, so a lot of the story is told through visual novel dialogue, and it is set in 2,000 years into the future, where humanity is pretty much extinct, and you are just like, you awaken as like completely a robot, but with like a human consciousness, and you're basically told that like you're one of like the last humans like to ever exist. And So, you know, you meet a bunch of other anime ladies who are also robots, and then like you go and fight a bunch of monsters, and it's all very. I think what really drew me to it the most was just like the visual style of the game. I found like there's a lot of like really um a lot of brutalist architecture, and there's a lot of just like very just like pretty just pretty intense looking like cybernetic like monster designs that I think just look. I really really like the look of this game, and I like the soundtrack a lot too. And I just found I found like there are aspects of the combat that can get a little repetitive, and some of the visual novel aspects of it do drag on for a little bit. Some of the dialogue can get a little, you know, hit and miss. But overall, I was so taken aback by just like how this game like looked visually, and you know, it reminded me a lot of Nier Automata, just in terms of like there's a lot of discussion about like you know what it means to be human and sentience and like the future of the human race amidst like after being like mostly wiped out by a pandemic, and like all these robots that sort of worship humanity and are trying to like rebuild humanity after this event. I thought it was really interesting, and I this game didn't get super positive responses when it came out, but I still think that there were a lot of really cool things about it that I appreciated that made me want to stick with it, and I ended up really liking it. So
Yeah, it's nice to kind of find those hidden gems, you know.
yeah, for sure. And it's definitely one of those because no one else played it except for like me and Vinny. Like that's it. So
All right,
yeah.
number 7 on my list, the counterpoint to or counterpart to Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6. And ultimately, I gave this the nod over Mortal Kombat 1 because if I was going to go back to play one of them, I'm going to go back and play Street Fighter 6 because at least if I do go online, I can win 1 out of 5. Like I can actually hold my own a little bit. It's a little bit easier to play. I like the fact that they at least tried a single player mode. It's a little lacking. It's a little light, but it was their first attempt at doing it, and it was fairly ambitious for what they wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely.
I liked a lot of the new characters. I think some of them were super fun to play as. And I just really enjoyed my time with it. And the only reason I dropped off was because the PS5 just doesn't really have options for an arcade stick. And I kept trying to buy an adapter and it kept getting canceled or it was out of stock and I would get refunded. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm just done. I'm not going to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on one of the 2 fight sticks that exists for the PS5, at least at the time in the summer when the game came out. So it kind of ended up just passing me by. But man, I really enjoyed my time with it. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I think the single player aspect of that game was like I agree was incredibly ambitious, and just seeing the monstrosities that people would make with the character creator was like such a fun thing about that game. I definitely, especially considering how rough of a launch that Street Fighter V had. This definitely feels like a much more welcome return to form for them. Like they had a lot of goodwill to make up, and I think this game did that like exceptionally well. So they should be definitely applauded for that. And yeah, it's fun to play. It feels good. They've done a lot to like try to bring in people outside of the FGC, and that's also great. Because like I mean, a lot of these games feel impenetrable to most people, so.
Yeah, big thing for accessibility with this game. It deserves recognition for that. They put in an alternate control system where you can just pretty much just do a directional push and one button to do not every move. You know, the players are definitely hamstrung if you're using it, but certainly it's playable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I definitely want to play more of it for sure. Okay, so my number 5 game is the Talos Principle 2. This is a sequel to the Talos Principle that came out back in like 2014. This was developed by the Serious Sam people, of all people. It is a puzzle game, very much in the ilk of very similar to Portal in a lot of ways, but you play as a robot that is like discovering its sentience and is also talking to like this outside voice that is essentially, you know, an insert for a god, and like, you know. It's probably the most like again the game I've seen most rooted in like discussions of philosophy and sentience and all that sort of stuff, and it's definitely thought provoking in ways that I would not expect most video games to be. and for that reason, I think it's what drew me to it initially. But the puzzling aspect of it is a lot of the same stuff you saw in the first game, but I think it's just way more fleshed out and way more. A lot of the stuff they do to like expand on those mechanics has been great. Like I think this game looks a lot better. It's a lot of its environments feel a lot more fleshed out. I think some of the puzzle designs that I've seen have been incredibly clever and really stumped me. Like I mean, I struggled my way through the Talos Principle 1 quite a bit, and this game is, I would say, just about it's like on par difficulty wise. And yeah, I think this is everything I wanted out of a sequel. I was kind of shocked that they even made a sequel, honestly, but I'm really glad they did because it shows that there's still plenty of life left in this, a pretty niche franchise for sure. But like, I thought it was fantastic. And again, everything I'd want out of a sequel, they took everything good about the first game and made it better.
Yeah.
And so it's great.
Yeah, righty. So my number 6, Starfield. This one really kind of bounced up and down the list. I think at one point it got as high as 3 and as low as 10. It definitely over the past week it got knocked down. I think it's a game that just it gets colder the longer it's been since you finish it. It doesn't really. It's not a memorable game. I can't think of specific missions that I would say like, oh man, that mission in Starfield, boy, that was cool. Man, that was neat. Like it just doesn't have that, but it was still an overall good enough experience that, I think it still deserves a place on the list. It has a lot of red flags. It has a lot of shortcomings, but I'm not going to lie to myself and say that I didn't have fun playing it. There are times where you push past some of those things because just for whatever reason, the game just gets its hooks in you and you really enjoy it. That was like me for Cyberpunk. I ignored a lot of the bugs and glitches and all that stuff just because there was something there to it that I enjoyed. And I don't necessarily know what that was with Starfield. I may look back a year from now when we're doing this next year and be like, man, I can't believe I put that on my top 10 list. And that may 100% be accurate. It may well be, but as it stands right now, it was an enjoyable experience. We'll see how the game ages. We're still waiting. Not like we're still waiting because it's been so long, but they already have that first DLC announced that you got if you bought the premium version of the game. We'll see what that is. If it's just more of the same, then it's going to become even more forgettable. Or if they find a way to put a twist on things, then maybe it redeems itself a little bit. But there's just it's a love-hate relationship with it. And I think that's the way a lot of people feel that enjoyed the game. I don't think there's anybody that really purely thinks that this is just an amazing experience outside of one person. A former coworker of ours is absolutely obsessed with that game. So he might be the one, because even people that love that game are like, yeah, there's problems with it. And then there's just a lot of people who are like, no, that game is trash. And I just gave up on it because it's not good. Usually you have people that love it or hate it and not people in the middle. But right now you pretty much only have people in the middle or people that hate it. And it's just kind of like an odd thing. But I think it did enough interesting things that I was okay with putting it in the middle of the pack for me. So.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I wonder how much of the people like who disliked the game were doing that like in the context of how much they enjoyed the previous games and how high they hold those games in regard. Like I think because they were probably just, a lot of people seemed like they were extra disappointed because this is just, I mean, they like it because it's another one of those, but they also hate it because it's just another one of those.
I think there are 3 kinds of people that don't like Starfield. I think the first kind are people that kind of had preconceived notions going in that they weren't going to like it and they just didn't let the game change their opinion. I think there are people that drank the Kool-Aid and thought it was going to be different than Skyrim and Morrowind and Fallout, and it just isn't. And then I think there's a group of people that it's not what they thought it was going to be. You know, it's a lot of things. It's not... when a game does 10 things, it could do 10 things well. When a game does 50 things, it's really difficult to do 50 things well.
Agreed. Yeah. It doesn't seem like they like actively misrepresented the game, what the game was going to be, but I think people definitely put it on a pedestal that it just was.
Yes.
going to live up.
I think there was a smidge, just a tiny bit of misrepresentation. Probably the least amount that we've ever gotten for most games of the past however many years. You know, really just a tiny bit. But there was enough to latch onto.
I would agree with that. Yeah. So I can definitely see like it was good, but in the context of like what people expected, I could see why it was disappointing or underwhelming in a lot of ways. Yeah. But all right, my number 5 game of this year was Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. This is a remake / a compilation, I guess, of the first 2 Advance Wars games that came out on Game Boy Advance back in the early 2000s. Those are 2 games that I played like the shit out of. Like I loved those games. I think that they were just they were kind of like my first introduction to like tactical RPGs. Like I was really late to something like Fire Emblem or something like Final Fantasy Tactics. Like I was definitely, I never got into Tactics Ogre either, but like so this was kind of my first foray into like, you know, tactical RPGs. And I've always loved the look of Advance Wars. I really liked the cartoony characters, and I loved how colorful it all was. It's weird to make war into like this super colorful, cute thing, but I think it was. I think they did a really good job with it, and I think a lot of that charm carries over to the remake. I will say that I think the visuals are a little underwhelming, like especially compared to like how amazing the pixel art of the originals looked. I don't think the game looks bad. I just think that I've definitely heard like the sentiment that it kind of looks like a mobile game.
It does. Yeah.
And definitely, I would agree with that for sure. But I still think like they did a good job of bringing that look into 3D graphics in a way that feels faithful and it still looks nice. And it still like maintains a lot of the charm that first game had, and some of like the new animated like cutscenes also look very good. The new music that they made is pretty okay for what it is. But I think in terms of recapturing like capturing the spirit and everything that made those first games good, I think this does a really good job. I put like 30 to 40 hours into these games, and just like I was really just super addicted to them. And so I think, I really, this is not the only remake of a game that I liked a lot when I was younger on this list, but I think this does enough to feel like a game that can, type of game that can exist now and still feel fresh and fun, and while still maintaining everything that made the original release great. So I think in that regard, it's a pretty fantastic remake and just an awesome compilation of games that are worth checking out.
Yeah. It kind of passed me by. I actually played a lot of those tactics games. I played Final Fantasy Tactics and Ogre Tactics and all that stuff. And I think maybe by the time Advance Wars came out, I had a Game Boy at the time. Mm-hmm. Maybe I was just done with the genre at the time. So I never ended up playing any of them. But I know that it is a beloved series.
Yeah.
All right. My number 5, and I want to get canceled here, so we'll be brief. Hogwarts Legacy. So I was real hot on this game when it came out. I remember making the statement saying it was my favorite thing I had played aside from Immortality since Spider-Man came out in 2018. I still stand by that at the time. I think there have been better games that came out. This game came out in February, so there were better games that came out, along the way. That's why it's at number 5 and not number 1. But I think it's what's the saying? I'm going to butcher it, but it's like the whole is more than the parts or something like that.
Sure.
I think the parts. Yeah, the overall experience is better than any one piece of the experience. It doesn't have super memorable characters. It doesn't have a super memorable story. But that experience of flying on a broom and going to the different little areas of the cities and stuff and exploring the castle and just dueling with other wizards and just seeing all these things that you only imagined in your head when you were reading the books or getting a different take on it than what you saw in the movies, I think was just a really special experience. And, I think they did a really good job with the game, better than I think a lot of people would have expected for a licensed licensed game. You know, they took their time with it, and it paid off. It was a very fun game to play. I enjoyed my time with it quite a bit.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely feels like a game that was made by people who genuinely really cared about the franchise and would like put a lot of time and effort into making something that was very faithful to that, and also, you know, making something that was, you know, that feels like super fleshed out for something that exists like far before anything that, like, you know, we've seen in the movies or the books or anything like that. So I think it deserves praise for that, and I think that the developers don't deserve like any of the grief here. Like they, you know, they made the best game they could have made, and I think that's great, and they deserve credit for that. So good for them. But yeah, my next game is my number 4, which ironically is Resident Evil 4, the remake. So Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, it's like one of my top 5. It's been in my top 5 for as long as it's been out. And I think that this game does a lot of really cool things with updating the franchise, or like updating that original game, and also, you know, and changing it to like make more sense in the context of now, while also like still remaining like super faithful to like what made that original game great. Like, there's obviously parts of that game that have not aged well, but when you think of like how revolutionary Resident Evil 4 was back when it first came out, I think, and how you know, how much of that game's DNA you can see elsewhere all over the industry. Like, I think they did a really good job of just like bringing that game into now, and really, I think all the changes that they made were really smart. I think some of the changes they made were intriguing, even if I wasn't like especially like blown away by them, or maybe because I have so much of an attachment to the original game. I tried to like take this game for what it was, as opposed to just being like, this is different from the old game, it sucks. Like, because I nothing. I mean, even just taking on its own merits, this game is like outstanding. Like, it's such a well-made survival horror game. It just so happens to be, you know, a complete like overhaul and reimagining / remake of one of my favorite games of all time. And I think in that regard, it really knocks it out of the park. And I think it was just, I was extremely impressed with how this game turned out. Like, just a really cool thing. So I'm curious to see what the next game is going to be with what they remake, because who knows like how that's going to go. But
you think they do 5?
Probably. Honestly, I feel like that's the safer option than doing Code Veronica. But like, I want them to do Code Veronica, but I just feel like there hasn't been enough time between 5 to do it again. But
yeah,
I could be wrong. Like, we'll see. But either way, I'm stoked to see what they do next. Like, I mean, unless they start to like remake 6, then like, who cares? But like,
they're gonna remake 7.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, let's remake 7. But yeah.
All right, number 4 on my list, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I've told the story a few times on the podcast, but you know, I was very apprehensive to play the first Star Wars Jedi game because I just didn't really like the Souls games. You know, they're not for me. But I ended up in a situation where I was sequestered away in a hotel for a couple of weeks, and I had downloaded the game to potentially check it out, and ended up getting kind of pulled into it and finished it in the course of that couple of weeks. And when the sequel came out, I was like, well, I don't know. I had some problems with that first game. I don't know if I want to spend the full price on it. I mean, maybe I'll just wait. But then they kept putting out more footage, and they put a lot of quality of life improvements into the game. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to buy this game when it comes out. And I want to say I raced through it, but I got it done within a week and a half, 2 weeks, I think, of it coming out. Maybe a little bit longer. I can't remember, but you know, it's fair. I wrapped it up fairly quickly. And just really loved it from start to finish. It has a basically non-existent story. You have no idea what the hell is going on in that game for hours into that game. You have no idea who the villain is, why anybody's doing anything. It just, I don't know. I was really disappointed. I hope they write that with the inevitable third game. But it plays so well. It's so satisfying to play with the combat and the parry system and just everything, and the force powers and just everything all rolled into one. It just makes for a really, really good experience. And they fixed a lot of the backtracking stuff, so you don't have to do as much, and that helps a lot. And yeah, just an overall really enjoyable experience. It's nice because there have been so many years of just bad Star Wars games that it's nice that we're getting some really high quality ones.
Yeah, everything like post Battlefront 2, you're just like, man, I really hope they write the course again and just like, I think Jedi Survivor, or not Jedi Survivor, I'm sorry, Jedi Fallen Order was such an amazing Star Wars game at the time. And so I think that this sequel seems to do a lot of, to follow up on it in really important ways. So that's great. I heard that at launch it was broken. I don't know.
I didn't run into those problems. I know on PC it was. Me playing it on played it on Xbox. Maybe, I honestly can't remember. I think I played it on Xbox. I didn't really run into any issues, but I know the PC version was a mess.
Yeah, that's kind of which there's been no shortage of bad PC ports as of late. Yeah, that game seems cool. I want to check it out. I still gotta finish the first one, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But all right, my number 3 is a game called Void Stranger. This is a puzzle game that has like a very interesting like monochrome like Game Boy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks kind of like a Game Boy game.
Yeah, it's almost it's like to a T like a Game Boy game, and it does a lot of like fourth wall breaking puzzles, like the same way that something like Baba Is You is. I think I've seen a lot of comparisons to Baba Is You. I found this to be an excellent puzzle game. Like I really like the visual style of it. I like the way that the story just kind of, subverts a lot of expectations and goes a lot deeper than you would expect. There's so much like fourth wall breaking and just acknowledging that this is a video game, and it just kind of like spends a lot of the game just like messing with your head. And I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to spoil aspects of it, but it's just a really fascinating spin on this type of puzzle game. And I really like Baba Is You, so I think having another game like that was right up my alley. It is only on Steam currently. I'm hoping it comes elsewhere just because it would be nice to be able to play this somewhere it's not glued to my computer. But like, it's great. I think it's a really cool game. It's $12 and it is one of the better puzzle games I've seen. I've definitely found myself like genuinely stumped at a lot of these. And I hope this game gets more attention because it is another one of those things that like very few people have checked out. And I was really shocked that it became like one of my favorite things of this year. I just was like, man, people need to know about this and they need to play it. And
yeah.
So I hope they play it. So it's well worth checking out, especially if you like Baba Is You.
Yeah. They eventually did a sequel to that, right?
I don't know. I think they did. I had to look into that.
I thought they did a.
I thought they planned on doing a sequel to Baba Is You, but
maybe not. I thought they did.
I think the developer was working on something else, but I can't.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Alrighty. Okay, my number 3 is a game that's still in early access, so I'm eagerly awaiting to see what the full release is going to be like, and that is Terrascape. Easily the best city builder I have played in some time, but it's a city builder with a twist because it is a deck-based game where you essentially have it's not even, I guess it's a deck of cards, but I mean they're little tiles that you get, and you kind of focus each turn on a different thing. Like I'm going to focus on farming, or I'm going to focus on the actual city, or water-based stuff, or whatever it may be, and you're essentially trying to make the biggest city as you possibly can before you run out of cards. And you can earn more cards by leveling up your city, and you have to figure out patterns. So if you put 4 housing tiles together, that creates a village, right? And if you do that, then you get a big bonus for XP, and you rank up and earn more cards. And, if you build, it's all like octagon patterns. So you put all these villages around, but leave the middle tile close and put a market in there. Well, now you've got this city square, and it makes these big things. If you put a bunch of churches together, eventually they'll become a cathedral and stuff like that. But they don't tell you any of this stuff. You have to figure it all out on your own. And it's just it was the game that I kept coming back to this year, where I could just turn off my brain and just enjoy the game and watch a show on my other screen, or listen to an album, or whatever it may be. And it was just a very relaxing, like Zen-like experience. I blasted through all of the challenges that they had. They had these little like mini scenarios. They had like a specific end goal. I got through all of those in the early access, and then it's just essentially free play. After that, and just put hours and hours and hours into it, and just really, really enjoyed it. So I am very much looking forward to. I don't know when 1.0. I haven't paid attention to it. Maybe if I go to their Steam page, it'll be like, hey, it's out next week or something. I don't think so, but I assume some point next year it'll be out. But I really liked it. I thought this was a great year for city builders, and this was my favorite one out of all of them.
Yeah, we got City Skylines too. We got a lot of like really, really, really great stuff. So that's cool. That sounds awesome. Like I didn't even know that it had like a deck building aspect of it. That sounds really cool. All right, so my number 2 game of this year is Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. This is the spiritual successor of sorts. Well, I guess they've come out and said it's a spiritual successor to Jet Grind Radio and Jet Set Radio Future, 2 games that I love. Like they came out of my body. Like they are. I think those are pivotal Dreamcast and Xbox games, respectively. And so this is a game that really tries to follow up on that style while giving you a lot more options in regards to like how you traverse environments and how much mobility you have. And they've also like made it a bit more of like an open, like a bit more open world oriented as opposed to the first games, which feels like it was, more mission based. And they've made a lot of changes to the game that made it like kind of given it its own identity, whether it's changing the graffiti mechanics pretty substantially, also giving you options for whether you're skating or riding a bike or riding a skateboard. Like, so initially, like I thought this game was like, it was a really good spiritual successor to Jet Grind Radio in really good ways and in ways that also made it feel really dated. But towards the end of the game, when I finally finished it, I ended up just like, I ended up just falling in love with the game. Like I think aesthetically, it is exactly what I would want on a follow-up to one of these types of games. And I think the soundtrack is outstanding. This definitely feels like the most. There have been a couple of attempts at trying to make like a spiritual successor to those games, and I think this is the best one of those. So despite the problems that I had with it, I still came away from it just like really, really enjoying the experience and hoping that like all the issues that I did have with it are fleshed out in a sequel if it gets made, which or in the next Jet Set Radio.
Because now we're getting one of those.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. But I think this is a really fascinating game, a game that I really enjoyed despite all of its shortcomings. And I just I love the shit out of it. So
yeah. All right, my number 2 is a game that at this point a week ago was not in my top 10. I really powered through because I did not want to miss out on it. Is Alan Wake 2. It is a truly special game. We've talked enough about it throughout our discussion so far, but I mean, it is a one of a kind of experience that I highly recommend. Even if you're like me and you traditionally don't like horror games, it is just, you want to see just a really well produced game. I always liken everything to sports. That's just kind of the way my brain works. And of course, when you think Alan Wake, you think sports, but everybody, you grow up liking basketball. We'll use basketball as an example. You like your team. Like I'm a Knicks fan because I'm from New York. Right. But it's not going to say just because I like the Knicks doesn't mean that I don't want to see LeBron James, arguably the greatest player of all time, play. I want to see the best of the best play at the highest level. So even if you're not a fan of the genre, this is the best of the best playing at the highest level. Like this is such an amazing experience from start to finish. Like it's unbelievable, and it brings people in that didn't play. This is a sequel. There are so many people playing this game that did not play or didn't even care about the original, like myself. And I'm just enthralled with this game. It's just truly unbelievable. It's just a fantastic game. And in a different year would have been number 1 easily.
Yeah, like I think that's been the most surprising thing to watch is that a lot of the people who came to this without like knowing anything about Alan Wake 1, or a lot of people just came to this game because they were fans of Control. they're fans of like previous Remedy games, but seeing like the reception of this game and how much it's actually forced people to like actually to play survival horror games, and I think that's awesome. And the more I hear about it, the more I'm just like, yeah, this game is truly something special and has managed to subvert like genre, like what people normally are comfortable with in terms of like what genres they like playing, and made them check it out. And I think that's awesome. So I think I'm really excited to finally play it. So
yeah, especially if you like Control. A lot of Control is in this game. I mean, this is a shared universe. I mean, it is characters from both games. You know, they're bleeding over into each other, and you know, they've really done a great job setting all this up. You know, for a larger world that their games can exist in.
For sure. So yeah, the more I hear about it, the more I might just check it out today. I might just get it. All right. So my number one game of this year is Wanted Dead. This is a PS5 game. It's out on Xbox and elsewhere. This is the follow-up of sorts to Devil's Third. Everyone's favorite, Devil's Third. There's a lot of DNA of Devil's Third in this game, and Devil's Third is a terrible video game. But like, also, I felt like there were some ideas there that like if this was like, you know, tightened up and had like better people, like, you know, a little bit more talent and time and resources behind it, they can make a kind of a cool thing. And so this game is quite perplexing for a number of different reasons. I think that this game almost feels like a time capsule of a game that should have come out in like 2007 or 8.
I think that's a lot of those games like Devil's Third and what was the other one? The No More Killers and all that stuff.
Heroes,
you know, it's like No More Heroes. It's like all this stuff that should have existed only in the mid 2000s and never escaped.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, I mean, to me, this game has like the most like Deadly Premonition energy I've ever seen in a game outside of Deadly Premonition. Like this game feels, this is 2023's Deadly Premonition by a mile. The story is just nonsense. It feels like all the dialogue was AI generated. Like people are just talking at each other. They're not talking to each other. Like it doesn't feel, none of the problems I have with this game feel like they're results of like not having enough time to finish it or not like having the resources or budget. Like this feels like the game they wanted to make, like top to bottom. And I kind of love it for that, because it is so absurd and stupid, and just everything about it is just, I can see why so many people were so mixed on it, because like it is a very difficult game, and it has a lot of the same issues with its controls and its mechanics that Devil's Third had. But I think the more time I put into it and the more time I played it, the more I got out of it, the more I found myself just kind of like latching onto it and enjoying it more. But it is a game that is just, at every step of the way, I was just so baffled by it. And I got so much pure just joy out of how absurd and silly and ridiculous the whole experience was, that I was willing to forgive like all the shortcomings it has.
Yeah, and sometimes you just click with a game and you're willing to put up with that stuff.
Yeah, like objectively, there are so many things about this game that were frustrating and just flat out not fun to engage with. But taken as a whole, I was just like, there was nothing. I can't remember the last time I played a game like this, and I don't know. It just it struck a chord with me in a way that I'm just like, this might not be the best thing I've played this year, but this is my favorite thing I've played this year by a mile. And I think it deserves attention that, like, you know, I hope that this becomes like a bargain bin gem someday, because yeah, I agree that $60 for this game is a little steep. I bought this game day one because, you know, that's just where my life ended up, I guess. But I love this game. I am fascinated with how dated and how nonsensical so many aspects of it feel. Yet this feels like this is the 100% the vision they went with, and they just stuck with it. And I appreciate it for just having the audacity to to commit to this type of game as hard as they did. I love it for that. So that's why it's my favorite game.
I remember, so I was at your house the day you bought this game, this was dropping off that television.
Yeah.
And I remember we were talking about this game because I think it was Jeff Gerstmann had covered it. And I was like, did you see this piece of shit that Gerstmann covered? And then you like go to the other room and you're like, oh yeah, I bought it today. And like walked into the room with it. And I was like, oh, fantastic.
Yep, I did. Yep. Here it is.
I was like,
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. And it's a game that I love so much, yet I still feel like I can't comfortably recommend to most people.
I like if you look at like the review blurbs for it online, it's like incomprehensible mess. Like it's just like all this like it's like just like one word just says horrible. Like it's so good. Like
yeah. Just like how divisive this thing is like I think the more people hate it, the more I love it. And I think it's just it's a fun time. It is an absolute mess and a glorious mess, but yeah, I love it for all those reasons. But yeah, so that's my game of the year.
Right on.
Sticking to it.
All right. So my game of the year, the official Perfect Reload game of the year, probably the worst kept secret if you've been following along, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. It is the sequel to one of my all-time favorite games, and it's a better game than that game. So it's just like, well, it has a better story, it plays better, it looks better, it runs better. I like the characters more. This is the best game that's come out. Like it was just, made it pretty easy.
Yep. Like, yeah. What more do you need to say about it? Like that game seems, like literally everything you'd want from a sequel. Like, I mean, that original game was so exceptional. I mean, there have been some pretty solid Spider-Man games, but nothing came close to the bar that first Insomniac game set. So the fact that they were able to push past that and make a better game is pretty amazing. So good on them for that. Like, that's awesome. I think it definitely deserves like all the praise it got for sure. Like, if you don't have a PS5, get a PS5 and play it. Like, that's kind of good.
It's a system seller, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Once again, real quick to congratulate our award winners: Spider-Man 2, Starfield, Yuri Lowenthal's best performance, Diablo 4. I don't know if you congratulate them; they won the Sad and Empty award. Cyberpunk's Redemption. We're looking forward to Star Wars Outlaws. I wish I had time with Baldur's Gate 3. Best story, Spider-Man 2. Best looking game, Alan Wake 2, and the best moment we sing from Alan Wake 2. And like I just mentioned, the official Perfect Reload game of the year, Spider-Man 2. It was a great year for games. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking at my list right now. I played 72 new releases in 2023 and had a great time with a large majority of them. It was really just a fantastic year. I'm highly looking forward to next year being just a complete and total letdown until we get to 2025 with Wolverine and Grand Theft Auto 6.
Sure. Is that when the Wolverine game's coming out? Really?
I think they said 2025. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. They're a 2-game studio, so it's not like they were waiting for Spider-Man to be done. They have another team working on it. So they've been working on it for, at this point, 3-ish years, roughly. Fair. So it'll be 4 years, 4.5 years by the time it comes out,
I hope we see the Indiana Jones game next year. I doubt it, but we'll see. I mean,
I thought that's what we were going to see at the Game Awards because they showed the Arcane logo or the Bethesda logo, and I was like, oh, we're getting Indiana Jones, and instead it was the next Arcane game. But I was just like, oh, okay, well, I guess wait a little bit longer. Honestly, I don't blame them for waiting on the Indiana Jones game because that new movie came out and nobody liked it. They might want to distance themselves a little bit.
Yeah, people were pretty down on that movie, huh? Forgot all about that, yeah. But yeah, I think 2024 will be great, but it's hard to. I mean, this feels like one of the best years in gaming since like '98.
Yeah,
honestly, and that's huge. So we'll see.
So yeah. But all right, friend Davis, I want to thank you for joining me along this multi-hour journey as we went through all the music and games that we enjoyed this year. I'm sure inevitably somebody's going to ask, why don't we touch upon movies or television? I don't know about Davis, but for me, I just don't watch enough current television or movies. to really stay up on that stuff and have
I'm
much
with you.
to talk about. I think I only watched maybe 3 or 4 TV shows that actually came out in 2023 this year. So yeah, it just wouldn't have been much to say, at least on my end.
Yeah. I'm too busy watching MRE reviews on YouTube, you know, just the good stuff.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice. It's funny that you watch that because like I was watching that guy like a decade ago.
He's been doing it for like forever.
Yes.
Him and LA Beast are like the veterans of YouTube have been doing the same thing with no format change for over a decade.
Yeah, I was watching LAB shit his brains out after eating sugar-free gummy bears. Good times.
A legend.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for, I mean, not that we're ending content for the rest of 2023, you know, stuff will still be happening, but thanks for such an amazing year on the channel in 2023. I grew by a lot of subscribers, tens of thousands of video views, just an unbelievable year that makes doing this all worthwhile. This is, for myself personally, been the highlight of my year in my life doing this channel. So I can't thank you all enough for hanging out and watching, and we're growing. We're starting to grow. There's a groundswell of disappointment, and it's just good times to be had. But that's gonna do it for me. Davis, once again, thanks for doing this with me, and we'll see y'all again real soon.